Oh, certainly. Welcome everybody to this year's annual and special town meetings. It is 7:30 and right on time. We had 124 people checked in, so we have a quorum. Now you all have to come back in October and we can have more applause then. It's amazing we have 124 people who don't give a damn about the Celtics, but you know. All right, so as usual, if you'll please rise and join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. So we'd like to remember a few people who have passed away since we last met. In 2017, we lost Marjorie Bates, Evelyn M. Barr, Thomas Pepe, Sylvia Redpath, Peter J. Rue, Roy W. Reamer, and Paul Tabor. And this year, we just lost Gordon Coyle. And they'll all be missed. They were all a big part of our town. And so if we could just take a moment to remember them, please. Thank you. We have a couple of announcements. We have Camp Kewanee Cleanup Day, which will be Saturday, May 12th from 8 in the morning to 1 p.m. Meet in front of Camp Kewanee's Needles Lodge. It's a great community service opportunity for students. So I'm sure all the students at the high school are watching me at home. Come on out, get your service hours. Looks good on the college transcript. We also have a community meeting to weigh in on the park design for the former Plymouth County Hospital grounds. This is being done, and I have to tell you, I burst out laughing when I saw the name of this committee, the final Plymouth County Hospital Reuse Committee. Sure. No, we can only hope that it'll be the final, right? It's going to be the final Plymouth County Hospital Reuse Committee. So please come out May 9th, that's Wednesday, from 7 to 8:30, the Hanson Middle School cafeteria, and share your thoughts on how to use the former county hospital. We also have a questionnaire here from Hanson Recreation. They should be out in the lobby if you may have already picked it up, but otherwise I believe it's online as well. Is that correct, Beth? It is online. So please take a moment and fill out the questionnaire so that we can maximize the benefits to the town. Unfortunately, she couldn't be here tonight, but I just wanted to acknowledge a very important person in our community, Dr. Ruth Gilbert-Whitner. This will be her last town meeting as superintendent of schools. And even though she's not here, I thought she merited a round of applause for all she's done for us. We have a couple of presentations. The first, if I could have Representative Cutler come up.
Can I bring a couple guests with
you? Yeah, of course. Bring up your guests.
Good evening, everybody. Thanks you for a quick indulgence. I'm joined by Mike Jackman from Congressman Bill Keating's office, and obviously our town administrator. And we'd like to ask our selectman, Jim McGann, to join us as well. Yes, Jim. So it's one of the nice things about my job is being able to help to recognize folks who contribute to our town and serve on various town boards and committees. I know as a former local town official as myself that it's a lot of hard work and not a whole heck of a lot of glory. And so we appreciate very much what the folks up here do, and also, of course, what all of you are doing by participating as well. And today we're recognizing someone who is going to be stepping down soon, but who's contributed a lot to the fabric of the town, through the Board of Selectmen. And so I'd like to, at this time, ask... I'd like to, at this time, read a citation to James McGann, who's from the Board of Selectmen, who will be stepping down. And Jim, we want to come on up front here, by the way. We want to thank you for all your great work to the town and appreciate it. And I have a citation here, and then I think Mike has a citation from Congressman Keating as well. And so if you'll bear with me, I would like to read it and embarrass you briefly.
Please,
okay?
thank you.
We'll just dip in here. Sorry, we have a small podium here and a lot of... be it hereby known to all that the Massachusetts House of Representatives offers its sincerest congratulations to James McGann in recognition of your leadership, professionalism, and dedication throughout 4 years of service to the community of Hanson on the Hanson Board of Selectmen. The entire membership extends its very best wishes and expresses the hope for future good fortune and continued success in all endeavors. Given this day of May 2018, the State House of Boston, Massachusetts, signed by Robert A. DeLeo, Speaker of the House, State Senator Mike Brady, and State Representative Josh Cutler. Yours truly. Jim, thank you.
Thank you, Josh.
So I think Mike has something on if you want to say at the end.
Sure. Just briefly on behalf of Congressman Keating, who is in D.C. tonight, so he couldn't be here with us, but he'd heard about this occasion and wanted to make sure that we were marking it as well. So it's just it's a lot shorter than Josh's, but I won't read the whole thing. But it's just recognizing your many years of service to the people of the town of Hanson as you retire from the Board of Selectmen. It's signed by Congressman Keating, and as Josh alluded to, public service can sometimes be a thankless task, and we just want to take a moment to thank you on behalf of the people of the town of Hanson. So congratulations.
Thanks, Mike. Thank you.
Jim, I just wanted to say, as with every selectman under whom I serve, I learn an awful lot, and I get an awful lot in terms of the companionship, in terms of the cooperation, in terms of, again, what I learn, what you bring to the table, what every member of the Board of Selectmen brings to the table. And I'll have that with me going forward in terms of serving the town of Hanson. And I hope you don't disappear. I hope I can call you if I need any advice
Absolutely.
going forward. So.
Always, Mike. Thank you very much, man. You're a good friend. Thank you. I'll make it short. Thank you very much, Mike and Josh and Mike. I'm grateful for this, ladies and gentlemen. It's been quite a journey. It's not always been fun, but it has been quite an experience. And for the most part, the best part of it is the people that I've dealt with. I've come to realize how many hardworking people we have in our town hall, in our town. Police, fire, the town employees. I've come to a different understanding of how things work in our town too. So my point to you is, if you have the opportunity to step up and to do the best you can, by all means, please do. And I want to thank you very much for allowing me to serve, and let's move on to town meeting. Thank you.
It was just pointed out to me that I made a mistake, or I made a glaring omission for the in memoriam portion of tonight. And as a Kiwanian, I should have known this, but Bob Biggins also passed away, and of course, he and his family sent many people to their eternal rest. Hopefully, he's sharing in that himself. So, just want to acknowledge Mr. Biggins. Tonight, before we move on to the special town meeting, I just wanted to do a couple of housekeeping points. The first one is, if you're not a voter, if you could please move to the visitors section, and if you're a voter, please move out of the visitors section, just so that it makes it easier for our tellers to keep count. We appreciate it. We also are going to be operating under the rules of town meeting time, the guide for moderators. And the quantum of the rules is always a question. At times, these articles are going to ask for 2/3 or a 9/10 vote. And what I'd like to do is make a motion, as we have for the last several town meetings, to allow me to determine if we've reached that amount. Of course, if somebody does not agree with my assessment, we can always go to a hand count. It takes nothing away, but it just allows me to say that something is 2/3 if only one person objects. Thank you. So all those in favor of that motion signify by saying aye. Aye. All those opposed, nay. The ayes have it. Thank you very much. And so I will now recess the annual town meeting for a special town meeting. So, Article 1, Mr. Hickey.
I move to pass over. Explanation, there are no...
Oh, do we have a second?
Oh, I'm sorry?
We need a second.
Don Howard, second.
Mr. Hickey.
Explanation, there are no past bills due.
That's wonderful. Great. All those in favor of passing over Article 1 signify by saying aye. Aye. All those opposed, nay. The ayes have it. Article 1 is adopted. Article 2, Mr. Mitchell.
I move the town will vote to transfer from available funds a sum of money to supplement appropriations previously voted at annual town meeting, May 2017, for the fiscal year beginning July 1st, 2017, for various town departments as printed in the warrant.
Second.
Seconded, Mr. Mitchell.
The purpose of this article is to supplement a number of line items in the current fiscal year's budget, FY18, in order to fund a number of additional expenses associated with the following.
Very good. You know what we'll do? Please take a look at Article 2, and I'm going to call out each line. And if you have an objection or a question, or you'd just like to make a statement, say hold, and we'll come back to it. If nobody holds, we'll just assume that it's being adopted. All right? Item 1. Adopted. Item 2. Adopted. Item 3. Adopted. Item 4. Adopted. Is there any, are there any questions or comments on the article overall? Seeing none. All those in favor of Article 2 signify by saying aye. Aye. All those opposed, nay. The ayes have it. Article 2 is adopted. Article 3, Lieutenant Casey.
I move the town votes to transfer a sum of $50,000 from free cash for the purpose of a new analog digital radio dispatch console for the police department.
Second.
Seconded. Lieutenant Casey.
The current two-position radio dispatch console is beginning to fail. The equipment is 11 years old and it has reached its end of its service life, and this piece of equipment is crucial to our public safety network in town.
Do we have any questions or comments on Article 3? Seeing none, all those in favor of Article 3, please signify by saying aye. Aye. All those opposed, nay. The ayes have it. Article 3 is adopted. Before we move on to Article 4, and I really can't believe nobody has called me on this, usually somebody pops right up and says, how much free cash do we have? So I'm going to tell you. Before we spent any money tonight, we had $896,541 in free cash. We had $791,456 in water surplus. And we had $1,148,727 in stabilization. That's for the town. And the school district in their stabilization account has $70,344,000. So, those are the numbers. Get out your calculators, we're going to be spending it quick. Article 4, Lieutenant Casey.
Thank you, sir. I move the town will vote to transfer a sum of $20,000 from free cash for the purpose of new ballistic vests for the police department.
Second.
Seconded, Lieutenant Casey.
The current vests are over 5 years old. The service life of these ballistic vests our 5 years. So this equipment, again, is crucial to our safety and our public town.
Any questions or comments on Article 4? Seeing none, all those in favor of Article 4 signify by saying aye. Aye. All those opposed, nay. The ayes have it. Article 4 is adopted. Article 5, Mr. McGann.
I move the town vote to transfer $10,000 from free cash for the grading of private ways under the direction of highway.
Second.
Seconded, Mr. McGann.
These funds are used to purchase materials and for contracting a contractor with grader for private ways which the town maintains, a sum of $10,000.
Any questions or comments on Article 5? Seeing none, all those in favor of Article 5 signify by saying aye. Aye. Those opposed, nay. The ayes have it. Article 5 is adopted. Article 6, Ms. Philbrook.
I move the town vote to transfer $30,000 from free cash for the purpose of replacing existing flooring in the senior center and adjoining community room.
Second.
Seconded, Ms. Philbrook.
The existing vinyl flooring is original to the building, built in 1991. The 27-year-old flooring has reached the end of its life and detracts from the beauty of the building.
Any questions or comments on Article 6? Seeing none, all those in favor of Article 6 signify by saying aye. Aye. All those opposed, nay. The ayes have it. Article 6 is adopted. Article 7, Ms. Norton.
I move the town. Can you hear me? Okay.
Now we can.
I move the town will vote to transfer $15,000 from free cash to be added to the amounts appropriated in Article 31 of the October 2017 special town meeting to replace and install the water wheel at the Thomas Mill.
Second.
Seconded, Ms. Norton.
The explanation is the special town meeting in October approved $9,000 to repair the Thomas Mill wheel, the water wheel. However, the repair of the wooden wheel is not feasible and will need to be rebuilt and replaced. In addition, the October request for funds did not include installation. The water wheel will be replaced and installed once the above request funds have been appropriated, the additional $15,000 to make it a total of $24,000 needed for this project.
Any questions or comments? Mr. McKinnon, could you come to the microphone and state your name and address? And I'd appreciate that from anybody, even if you think I know you.
Hi, Steve McKinnon from Stevens Street. What is this for?
Ms. Norton?
I'm going to
What is the purpose of this water wheel?
I'm going to refer to Alan Clemens, who is the historian for the town, and he works with the Thomas Mill. Just a moment.
Mr. Clemens.
Alan Clemens, Indian Head Street. In 50 years ago, we built the Thomas Mill, and Frank Sawyer built a wooden water wheel for the mill. The wheel is deteriorated. If we don't replace it, you're going to have just a building and a waterfall and nothing else. If you want a mill, we're going to have our 200th anniversary coming up. If you want a mill with a wheel, this is how we're going to do it. If you don't want to have a wheel at the mill, why, vote no. That's all I have to say.
Mr. McKinnon, I take it you want to rebut?
Mr. Moderator, through you. Maybe the town accountant knows how much revenue this mill has generated for the town in the last fiscal year?
Less than $500.
Less than $500 in the last fiscal year, so we're going to spend another $15,000 on this? Folks, makes no sense to me.
Any other questions or comments on Article 7? Mr. Armstrong.
Jim Armstrong, 65 Richard Road, Hanson. Just to the town meeting, as the former chairman of the Energy Committee in town, one of the things I wanted to make sure you knew is one of our parts of our energy plan was to be able to turn a wheel, whenever it gets working again, back into an energy generating source for the town. It's not part of our funding right now, but by replacing the wheel, we have the opportunity to put a flywheel on it and actually make some electricity from that wheel in it. It's not part of this cost, I'm being upfront with you, but that was part of the plan we put together almost 6 years ago for the town. And it is part of our plan, but we could actually go after some grants later on to do it, but we need a wheel that works in order to make it viable. Thank you.
Mr. Young.
Bruce Young, 594 Indian Head Street. I want to remind everybody that mill down there was part of our town's 200th anniversary project. It was the cornerstone of it. It was built with lumber that was hewn from the town forest and built under the specs dating back to like 1695 to make it historically correct. It was also the first major project that community preservation funds funded, so the town could preserve that mill as an historic site for future generations to come. What's an historic old mill without a working water wheel? That was the fascination and beauty of that project. A blind carpenter who was born and raised in Hanson supervised the building of that water wheel. And there was a parade back then where that water wheel was installed. It was a wonderful project. The mill is one of the nicest historic representatives of a 1695 mill in entire southeastern Massachusetts. It's the site of the first working mill in southeastern Massachusetts. Let's have a really nice historic, and it's on the state greenway. It's part of the Greenway project. Let's have a nice historic water wheel with a wheel that functions. The sluiceway is already there. That's the function of a mill.
I'm still trying to get over the fact that they had a parade for the water wheel, but Mr. McKinnon, I believe you.
I'd like to thank Mr. Young for the history lesson, but think about the numbers, folks. 15,000, I mean, listen, in the big scheme of things, it's not a lot of money. To me, it's principle. We got other needs in the town. I think we could better spend 15,000 bucks done on a water wheel at a mill that how many people actually use, generating 500 bucks a year as revenue to the town. Makes no fiscal sense.
Any other questions or comments? Mr. Clements.
Just a quick comment. That mill site was the first place in Hanson where Europeans came to live, and for many, many years it was the economic driving force for the whole region. And we have a 200th anniversary coming up, and if we forget all that heritage, shame on us. I also would point out that if you go to the town website, and pretty sure it's in other places too, you look at the images there, right in the middle is the Thomas Mill. It's unique, it's historic. As Mr. Armstrong says, it could be at least a small part of our future. It's in the geographic center of town, on the busiest road we have. It's part of our image, and we're either proud of this town and its heritage and its future, or we don't care.
I don't want to grind this issue down, but it's early. Wait until I really get going. Yes, sir.
My name is David Pell. I live on Great Cedar Drive in Hanson. You mentioned using it for generating electricity. Is there any amounts that you plan to generate so that you can generate more than the $500 that this gentleman has mentioned?
We haven't figured that out yet.
Okay. But it's on the wheel.
Okay. It was a plan we put together. That's all it is. I just want to make people aware that it was a part of the plan, the energy plan for the town.
All righty.
Can I make a comment?
Mr. Hickey.
Jim Hickey, Perry Ave. There was also, and the town accountant is absolutely right, that it generates about $500 a year, but there was a play done last October that raised over $1,500. And because of the way it's set up, it, with the red tape, it had to go into the general fund instead of going directly to the mill.
All right. So, yes.
Amy Wright, Lance Lane. I think for the Finance Committee, our stance is that there is a 200th anniversary fund that they could get money out of, or find a different source than free cash, particularly this town meeting.
Mr. McGann.
So I understand the fiscal concept. I understand it, Mr. McKinnon, I do. But I think as a town, and this being our historical, this is a piece of history for Hanson, we're obligated to take care of it and to bring it up to speed. And I know that this is pretty much low money in consideration. If it was maybe a significant amount, I can understand. But I think as a town, we're obligated to take care of the buildings that we have. And this seems like a good idea. It's not always about money and making money, with me personally, I guess. But in my opinion, I think it's well worth the money.
Mrs. Kemet. We'll have Ms. Kemet, please.
Yeah, I am part of the 200th anniversary committee, and I can tell you that we really do have plans to do quite a bit on that particular site because of the reasons that both of the Mr. Clements have cited. And in terms of the notion that there would be prolific amount of money in our 200th anniversary account, that would not be accurate. We really don't have a lot of money there. And the other thing that I'd like to point out is that at a previous town meeting, we did allocate some money for this because people recognized that it was important. It's iconic, and I do recognize what Mr. McKinnon is saying, but at times there are some things that maybe are elevated above just purely fiscal concerns, and I think this might be one of them.
All right, last comment, please.
Thank you. Sylvia Salas, Woodman Terrace. I'm chairman of the mill committee. We have a lot of people who come to the mill who not necessarily renting it, but we have weddings that, wedding pictures are taken there. A couple weeks ago, there was a high school dance there. Parties, all sorts of things. There's a lot of people within the town. And we have a new bench there. People come and they have picnics there. So the amount of money that comes in isn't necessarily related to the amount of use. A lot of people are very proud of that mill and would like to see the wheel.
All right. All those in favor of Article 7, please signify by saying aye. Aye. All those opposed, nay. Nay. The ayes have it. Article 7 is adopted. Article 8, Mr. Hayes.
I move the town vote to transfer $30,000 for the amounts appropriated in Article 34 of the October 2014 special town meeting, $15,000 from the amounts appropriated in Article 10 of the October 2015 special town meeting, and $5,000 from the amounts appropriated in Article 11, Item 5 of the May 2016 annual town meeting for the repairs at Indian Head Elementary and Hanson Middle School.
Seconded, Mr. Hayes.
Indian Head and Hanson Middle School replacement of deteriorating doors and card access, estimated $25,000. Indian Head replacement of acoustic tiles in the gymnasium, which are stained and the attenuation very poor, needed to be replaced, $25,000. Total estimated $50,000.
Any questions or comments on Article 8? Seeing none. All those in favor of Article 8 signify by saying aye. Aye. All those opposed, nay. The ayes have it. Article 8 is adopted. Article 9, Mr. Hayes.
I move the town vote to transfer $35,000 from the amounts appropriated in Article 11, Item 6 of the May 2016 annual town meeting to reimburse the Whitman-Hanson Regional School District for the removal of asbestos and retile in rooms 101 and 100, and to remove and replace the walls at the Indian Head Elementary School.
Seconded, Mr. Hayes.
This is the repairs that were being done to move some of the children around.
Any questions or comments on Article 9? Seeing none. All those in favor of Article 9 signify by saying aye. Aye. All those opposed, nay. The ayes have it. Article 9 is adopted. Article 10, Mr. Zucco.
I move the town to transfer $25,000 from the Recreation Enterprise retained earnings to supplement the amounts appropriated in Article 11, Item 8 of the May 2016 annual town meeting to replace the septic system at Camp Kawani.
Seconded, Mr. Zucco.
Additional unexpected plumbing work was identified during the course of the Camp Kawani septic project. Funding will allow completion of the project, which is estimated at $25,000.
Any questions or comments on Article 10? Seeing none, all those in favor of Article 10 signify by saying aye. Aye. All those opposed, nay. The ayes have it. Article 10 is adopted. Article 11, Mr. Smith.
I move the town vote to transfer $23,000 from the Recreation Enterprise retained earnings to establish Wi-Fi capabilities throughout the camp via Comcast Underground and aerial connections.
Seconded. Mr. Smith.
This is the first step in establishing a pay-as-you-go online payment option at the Cove and Lodge area to attain the goal of a no-cash policy throughout the camp.
Any questions or comments on Article 11? Seeing none, all those in favor of Article 11 signify by saying aye. Aye. All those opposed, nay. The ayes have it. Article 11 is adopted. Article 12, Ms. Cohen.
No, Patty Norton.
Oh, I'm sorry, Ms. Norton.
I move the town vote to transfer $50,000 from the amounts appropriated in Article 15 of the May 2015 annual town meeting repairs to the North End cabins and $30,000 from the community preservation undesignated fund balance for replacement of the docks at Cranberry Cove.
Second.
Seconded. Ms. Norton.
This article seeks to reallocate previously approved excess CPC funding from Camp Kewaunee North End cabin repair, as well as additional CPC funding. All combined funds would remain dedicated to Camp Kewaunee improvements, namely replacing of the docks at Camp Kewaunee, at Cranberry Cove.
Any questions or comments? Is there a timeline for the replacement?
They expect to have it finished shortly, Diane?
Sorry, I'm complicating things. But I use those.
Diane Cohen, 767 Pleasant Street. We expect, once the money is allocated, to hopefully have the new docks installed before the last day of school, which is when the Cove opens.
Terrific, thank you. Any other questions or comments? Seeing none, all those in favor of Article 12 signify by saying aye. Aye. All those opposed, nay. The ayes have it. Article 12 is adopted. Article 13, Ms. Fitzgerald Kemet.
I move the town vote to amend the Wage and Personnel Bylaws, Article 2-12, Classification and Compensation, by deleting Sections 11A through 11E in its entirety and inserting the new Sections 11A through 11E as printed in the warrant.
Second. Seconded. Ms. Fitzgerald Kemet.
The changes to the compensation plan are highlighted, which include increasing the top of the range of the assistant to the police chief, Section 11B-B, from $28 to $32, increasing the top of the range for student police officers, Section 11B-BB, from $30 to $35, and adding a new position, DD, for part-time police officers, special police officers.
Any questions or comments on Article 13? Seeing none, all those in favor of Article 13 signify by saying aye. Aye. All those opposed, nay. The ayes have it. Article 13 is adopted. Article 14, Mr. Hickey.
I move the town vote to amend the general bylaws, Article 2-12, Classification and Comprehension, Section 12B,
Sorry,
Eligibility
Mr. Hickey.
for Benefits, by adding a new Section C as printed in the warrant.
Second. Are we okay with that, Beth?
Oh.
I did. If you could just repeat that, Mr. Hickey, I think we missed a word.
Classification and compensation.
Yes.
What did I say?
You said a different word.
Yeah, I think we just missed it.
Okay.
All right. Do we have a second?
Second.
Seconded. Mr. Hickey.
This article seeks to set the health insurance contributions ratio between the town and employees under the personal bylaw in balance with recently bargained ratios for police, fire, clerical, dispatch, and highway unions.
Any questions or comments on Article 14? Seeing none. All those in favor of Article 14 signify by saying aye. Aye. All those opposed, nay. The ayes have it. Article 14 is adopted. Article 15, Mr. Garvey.
I move the town vote to rescind the borrowing authority for $500,000, which constitutes the balance that is not going to be borrowed for the water tank rehabilitation. Article 20 of the May 4th, 2015 annual town meeting.
Seconded. Mr. Garvey.
There's no explanation.
Ah.
It's just...
It stands on its own. I would point out that this vote will require a 2/3 vote. Any questions or comments on Article 15? Seeing none. All those in favor of Article 15 signify by saying aye. Aye. All those opposed, nay. The ayes have it by the required 2/3 vote. Article 15 is adopted. Article 16, Mr. Mitchell.
I move the town vote to rescind the borrowing authority for $700,000, which constitutes the balance that is not going to be borrowed for the demolition of the Plymouth County Hospital. Article 6 of the October 3rd, 2016 special town meeting.
Do we have a second?
Second.
Mr. Mitchell.
This requires a 2/3 vote.
And again, stands as printed. Any questions or comments on Article 16? Seeing none, all those in favor of Article 16 signify by saying aye. Aye. All those opposed, nay. Article 16 is adopted by the required 2/3 vote. I will now adjourn the special town meeting and resume the annual town meeting. All righty. So now the articles for the annual town meeting are printed on blue paper. Article 1, Mr. Hickey.
I move the town vote to hear reports of various town officers, committees, special committees, and act thereon.
Second.
Seconded, Mr. Hickey.
The reports voted on are those published in the 2017 town report.
Which are available outside and free of charge, so pick one up. All those in favor of Article 1 signify by saying aye. Aye. All those opposed, nay. The ayes have it. Article 1 is adopted. Article 2, Mr. Mitchell.
I move the town vote to authorize the treasurer-collector to enter into a compensating balance agreement during fiscal 2019 as permitted by Mass General Law, Chapter 44, Section 53F.
Second.
Seconded, Mr. Mitchell.
Every year this article is voted, it simply allows the treasurer-collector to maintain accounts using credits instead of money to pay for banking charges.
Any questions or comments on Article 2? Seeing none, all those in favor of Article 2 signify by saying aye. Aye. All those opposed, nay. The ayes have it. Article 2 is adopted. Article 3, Mr. McGann.
I move the town vote to transfer $20,000 from overlay surplus for the treasurer collector's tax title account.
Second.
Seconded, Mr. McGann.
This money will be used to cover the costs incurred for filing and advertising properties with delinquent taxes and also to pay any legal fees resulting from this process.
Any questions or comments on Article 3? Seeing none, all those in favor of Article 3 signify by saying aye. Aye. All those opposed, nay. The ayes have it. Article 3 is adopted. Article 4, Ms. Fitzgerald Kemet.
I move the town vote to fix the salary and compensation of all paid elected officers of the town as printed in the warrant.
Second.
Seconded, Ms. Fitzgerald Kemet.
This article sets the salary limits for the elected officials. Article 5 funds the salaries.
Any questions or comments? Seeing none, all those in favor of Article 4 signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, nay. The ayes have it. Article 4 is adopted. Article 5, Mr. Mitchell.
I move the town vote to determine what sums of money the town will raise and appropriate by taxation, transfer from free cash, transfer from town ambulance funds, water department revenue, water surplus, Title V special revenue fund, MWPAT loan repayment, receipt reserved for appropriation, conservation notice intent fund, overlay surplus, and fund balance reserved for reduction of future excluded debt to defray charges and expenses of the town, including debt and interest, and to provide for a reserve fund for the 2019 fiscal year as printed in the warrant.
Second.
Seconded.
This article refers to the FY 2019 annual budget lines.
All right, so everybody should have the budget in front of them. Just a few notes. Just like we did earlier, I'll read off line by line. If you would like to comment or question or give a short oration on for or against, please say hold, and I will come back to it. Otherwise, I'll consider it adopted. Also, what we're voting on is the final column of numbers. That is the Finance Committee recommendation. So in some places, there may be a difference in numbers, but we are voting on the Finance Committee's recommendations. So we'll start. Line 1, adopted. Line 2, adopted. Line 3, adopted. Line 4, adopted. Line 5, adopted. Line 6, adopted. Line 7, adopted. Line 8, adopted. Line 9, adopted. Line 10, adopted. Line 11, adopted. Line 12, adopted. Line 13, adopted. Line 14, adopted. Line 15, adopted. Line 16, adopted. Line 17, adopted. Line 18, adopted. Line 19, adopted. Line 20, adopted. Line 21, adopted. Line 22, adopted. Line 23, adopted. Line 24, adopted. Line 25, line 25 is held. Line 26, adopted. Line 27, adopted. Line 28, adopted. Line 29, adopted. Line 30, adopted. Line 31, adopted. Line 32, adopted. Line 33, adopted. Line 34, adopted. Line 35, adopted. Line 36, adopted. Line 37, adopted. Line 38, adopted. Line 39, adopted. Line 40, adopted. Line 41, adopted. Line 42, adopted. Line 43, adopted. Line 44, adopted. Line 45, adopted. Line 46, adopted. Line 47, adopted. Line 48, adopted. Line 49, adopted. Line 50, adopted. Line 51, adopted. Line 52, adopted. Line 53, adopted. Line 54, adopted. Line 55, adopted. Line 56, adopted. Line 57, adopted. Line 58, adopted. Line 59, adopted. Line 60, adopted. Line 61, adopted. Line 62, adopted. Line 63, adopted. Line 64, adopted. Line 65, adopted. Line 66, Adopted. Line 67. Adopted. Line 68. Adopted. Line 69. Adopted. Line 70. Adopted. Line 71. Adopted. Line 72. Adopted. Line 73. Adopted. Line 74. Adopted. Line 75. Adopted. Line 76. Line 76 is held. Line 77. Adopted. Line 78. Adopted. Line 79. Adopted. Line 80. Adopted. Line 81. Adopted. Line 82. Adopted. Line 83. Adopted. Line 84. Adopted. Line 85. Adopted. Line 86. Adopted. Line 87. Adopted. All right, by my count, we have two lines that have been held. So we will return to line 25, that is salaries for the planning board. Are there any comments or questions regarding that line? Yes, sir.
Good evening, Don Ellis, Planning Board.
Mr. Ellis.
742 High Street, Hanson. How much free cash do we have left?
Do we know how much?
Mr. Ellis, this would actually, as part of the operating budget, not necessarily.
Have I got the wrong budget?
Yeah, by our count, after the overall budget has been reviewed, the town has a remaining surplus for the operating budget of $8,110.
Okay.
And keep in mind that included nothing for stabilization for the town and nothing for stabilization for the school systems.
So you have 8,000 left over.
$8,110.
I'd like to take 5,000 of that and put it towards the town planner's salary. The reason being is that we're going out for a new town planner.
I've been counseled by our legal counsel that we can't increase a line through an amendment. We can reduce lines, but we can't increase them.
How do you increase it?
I think you have to go through the budgeting process. Is that correct? The town council.
So as a matter of, hi Don. So as a matter of course, you would have had to done that through a separate article through free cash, through a separate free cash article. You can't do it at this juncture.
Can't do it.
No.
Not just a little?
I'm sorry.
Thank you.
Any other questions or comments on Article 25? Thank you very much, Mr. Zucco. All those in favor of Article 25 as printed in the warrant, please signify by saying aye. Aye. All those opposed, nay. The ayes have it. Article 25 is adopted. Next, we move to line 76, which is Park and Fields expenses. Any, Mr. Campbell?
There was two lines. You had 25, and then there was a second one that was held.
Yeah, the second one is line 76. So we just disposed of line 25. I'm sorry, thank you very much. It was line 25. Mr. Soper, do you have any questions or comments on this line?
I do. David Soper, 176 High Street. Parks and field expenses, it's just been my experience with my past involvement in the town that soccer, youth sports have always took care of these fields through fees, through parents paying for these leagues. What's the $25,000 for on the expenses for this park and recreation line?
Mr. Mitchell.
The $25,000 is to maintain the 7 fields, the soccer fields, the baseball fields that we have in town. That pays for the fertilizer, maintaining the irrigation, the cleanup on the fields. And
No, I understand all that, but what are the parents paying when they sign up their kids for these fees? Where do they
it doesn't go to Parks and Fields. Parks and Fields are in charge of all 7 fields, David, in the town. So, we don't get any money from towns. I know baseball will do a little bit to their fields, but we don't get any help from any sports groups other than manual labor. We don't get any checks.
All right, fair enough.
Any other questions or comments? Oh, we have one? Okay. Teach you for sitting so far away from the microphone. No, that's wonderful. Please.
Is there like a...
Oh, your name and address, please.
Sorry, Susan Burke at 1190 East Washington Street. Can you hear me now?
Yeah.
Is there anywhere that the town can reference where that money is coming from? Because you say there isn't checks and it doesn't come from our fees, but I feel like some of these sporting events do provide checks to some part for maintaining the field. So I just want to know, can we see a breakdown of where the money
You'd have
goes?
to talk to the individual sports groups, whether it was soccer, baseball, or football, and find out where their funds are going from any fundraisers that they have.
Is it like a budget for Park and Rec?
Yeah, we have a budget of $25,000. Just to give you guys an idea, it's just about $9,000 just to fertilize 7 fields every year, let alone turning on the irrigation for 7 fields, maintaining them throughout the year. It's very expensive to maintain 7 fields.
Mr. Armstrong?
Yes, Jim Armstrong, 65 Richard Road. As a former soccer board member, just so people know, a lot of the fences, a lot of the field renovation that was done around the Indian Head School, the renovation at the middle school here, a lot of these were actually paid for by the different organizations. So a lot of the fundraising they do is done to not only line the fields and maintain it that way. They may take care of the mowing and the grass, but most of the other money from those fields for years have been paying for installing the fences so that the town doesn't have capital expenses. I know I was on the board for 10 years with Jim, and we spent a lot of money on fixing the soccer fields up in town, and that all came from our parents' money. And that's something that continues to go on in all the fields, and all the different groups are putting stuff back into their fields. It may not show up in a town budget, because to be honest with everybody, it's cheaper to do it ourselves than to have it go through the normal public bid process. And that's why a lot of stuff is done that way.
Oh, yeah. One moment. Was there a question or?
No, Peggy Westfield, State Street. I said uniforms and equipment.
That's right.
Very good. Mr. McGann.
I was going to agree. Uniforms, equipment to go soon. Sometimes, from when I used to do it, I do know that they had to pay fees to join in some of the leagues. So they may have to pay certain money to play within the organization of Mass Youth Soccer or Baseball Little League has to pay certain fees. I also know that they also pay for their referees, both soccer and baseball. I know those numbers aren't probably a lot, but it's the money is spread out according to that to each organization.
Any other questions or comments? Seeing none, all those in favor of line 76 as printed in the budget, please signify by saying aye. Aye. All those opposed, nay. The ayes have it. Line 76 is adopted. So we have adopted all of the lines, and now we have a motion to adopt Article 5, and it has been seconded. So if there's any questions or comments on the budget itself, this would be the time to do it. Yes, sir.
I already said my name, but anyway. I noticed that we haven't approved or disapproved the pot dispensaries.
Not that I believe that's coming later on.
Right. So I'm just wondering, in the budget, did we plan for anybody to be the person that oversees the situation?
They wouldn't budget for something that hasn't been approved yet by the meeting.
Well, exactly. I mean, how do we go about doing that?
That would be done through the budgeting process for the October town meeting or even for the next May town meeting. Any other questions or comments? Seeing none, all those in favor of Article 5 signify by saying aye. Aye. All those opposed, nay. The ayes have it. Article 5 is adopted. Article 6, Ms. Cohen.
I move the town vote to raise and appropriate the following sums of money to operate the Recreation Department during fiscal year 2019 under the provisions of MGL Chapter 44, Section 53F and 1/2, as printed in the warrant.
Second.
Seconded, Ms. Cohen.
The Recreation Department costs now shown in the Enterprise Fund budget, printed. All costs related to the operation of Camp Kawani are projected to be offset by the program revenues. All surpluses of this account at the end of the year will remain within the account.
Any questions or comments regarding Article 6? Seeing none, all those in favor of Article 6 signify by saying aye. Aye. All those opposed, nay. The ayes have it. Article 6 is adopted. Article 7, Ms. Diaz. There you are.
The town will vote to raise and appropriate the following sums of money to operate the transfer station during fiscal year 2019 under the provisions of Mass General Law, Chapter 44, Section 53F and 1/2, as printed in the warrant.
Second.
It's seconded. Ms. Diaz.
And the explanation is it's the difference that we need between what the transfer station brings in, which is to cover salaries and indirect costs.
Any questions or comments on Article 7? All those in favor of Article 7 signify by saying aye. Aye. All those opposed, nay. The ayes have it. Article 7 is adopted. Article 8, Ms. Norton.
I move the town vote to appropriate or reserve from fiscal year 2019 Community Preservation Fund estimated annual revenues and the amount recommended by the Community Preservation Committee for committee administrative expenses, community preservation projects, and other expenses in the fiscal year 2019, with each item to be considered as a separate appropriation as printed in the warrant.
Second.
Seconded. Ms. Norton.
This article ensues that Hanson's community preservation accounts are compliant with the Community Preservation Act, which requires that a certain portion of the CPA funds be set aside for open space projects, community housing projects, historical projects, and recreation projects. In addition, it sets aside money for the administrative expenses of the Community Preservation Committee.
Any questions or comments on Article 8? Seeing none, all those in favor of Article 8 signify by saying aye. Aye. All those opposed, nay. The ayes have it. Article 8 is adopted. Article 9, Mr. Norton.
I move the town vote to adopt the capital improvement program as presented by the Capital Improvement Committee.
Second.
Seconded. Mr. Norton.
The explanation of these, each one is separate. There's a list of the projects and the amounts.
Any questions or comments regarding the adoption of this article? Seeing none, all those in favor of Article 9 signify by saying aye. Aye. All those opposed, nay. The ayes have it. Article 9 is adopted. Article 10, Mr. Norton.
I move the town vote to transfer $574,000 free cash to various department capital accounts for the following items as printed in the warrant.
Second.
Seconded. Mr. Norton.
These are all individually explained. The line 1 is a generator that is needed at Town Hall to provide and continue power to the computer network, which allows for undisrupted communications between the administrator and public safety personnel. Item 2 is a fire department floor rehabilitation. Item 3 is a highway utility truck. Item 4 is to replace and install a playground to meet the current safety standards and to meet the enrollment standards and meet the ADA requirements at the school. Item 5 is to increase security at the front entrance, install card access to interior front entrance doors and move interior doors and walls, install new ceilings, counter, and reconfigure office space with the security windows to ensure safety for staff and students. Item 6 is to replace the siding and remove the lead paint, replace exterior trim, repair the columns and new lightings, repair the front stairway and platforms, and repaint the facade at Indian Head School.
So what we'll do is, once again, I'll read off the lines, and if you would like to hold it for further discussion, please say hold. Line 1. Line 1 is held. Line 2. Line 2 is adopted. Line 3. Line 3 is held. Line 4. Line 4 is adopted. Line 5. Line 5 is held. Line 6. Line 6 is adopted. All right. We have more holds on this article than the entire budget. Line 1. Any questions or comments?
Kathy Marini, 181 Union Street. I noticed that the Finance Committee voted not to recommend line 1. Could you tell us why, please?
Mr. Duggan.
Certainly. As we took a look at this by way of history, during the storms over the winter, a reserve fund transfer of approximately $35,000 was used to fund a duplicate server that was moved to the police station, and the police station having a generator to ensure continuous communication at that point. We as a committee had approved that request, felt that at this time and our decisions in regards to these items were in a tight budget situation. We thought that we've already addressed this at this point, and that this wasn't something that we felt was appropriate to spend at this point in time. I will acknowledge that we looked at it as a point of communication between highway, police, fire, town administrators. During the Board of Selectmen's preview meeting, it was pointed out that this would also support for employees in the town hall if the town was shut down for multiple days, not just public safety during an immediate storm.
Ms. Marini?
And question on number 3, you also voted not to recommend Article 3, or line 3?
Along the same thought process in terms of the amount of spending, the tight budget situation, and the driving need for the equipment at this point in time.
Okay. So if my math is somewhat correct, after the special town meeting, we had about $601,500 in free cash. If this is $574 for the total, how much free cash would we have if we voted all 6 of these?
$27,500.
And is that enough to fund the rest of the town meeting?
Yes, it is. I'm told by our town.
Mr. Moderator,
Mr. Duggan.
The following article would be account for $24,105 of that $27,000 that was just referenced.
So we're going to squeak by. Mr. Norton. Oh, you're just technical.
Shut the feedback up.
Yeah, I'm getting it too. Are there any other questions or comments on line 1? Mr. Weeks.
Hi, Joe Weeks, 83 Hancock Street. I'm speaking primarily to line 1. I just think, just like the Thomas Mill Wheel, this is a good investment for the town to make sure that our town hall stays up and running, not just for the storm, but for the days, sometimes weeks after the storm. I think it's just incredibly important that the town does not shut down because of storm. Do appreciate the hard work of the Finance Committee and you acknowledging some of the conversations that happened, but I think that there are certain things that we should invest in, and this is one of them, so thank you.
Any other questions or comments on line 1? The town administrator.
I just wanted to clarify that when we approached the FinCom back during the storm season, that the addition of the server was a short-term fix to have requested, and to the FinCom's credit, they thought it would make sense to buy a generator at that time. However, for us to go through the process of buying a generator at that time, the cost would have required us to go through certain procurement procedures that are required by the state that would not have allowed a very quick turnaround time. In addition to that, there was other work that needs to be done with the generator, namely an awful lot of electrical work and an awful lot of pad, a cement pad would need to be put down. So at the time when we requested the server, it was to try to, as quickly as possible, address a public safety issue. And the request for the generator is more of a long-term solution for redundancies, as well as what I think the chairman of the FinCom just mentioned, the continuation of operation at Town Hall.
Any other questions or comments on line 1? Mr. Armstrong.
Through you to the previous speaker, the town administrator. When we're looking at this, if this is classified as an emergency generator, it has to have fuel storage on site. If this is classified as a backup generator, we could use natural gas and we wouldn't have fuel stored that close to the lake. And part of my question is, from a clarification purpose, and this is not the time to do it, usually you do before this, but if we were looking at a natural gas generator on this site, for the backup, natural gas is pretty steady whenever you have fuel outages. I asked you consider to use a natural gas generator rather than a diesel one, which is a typical backup, because of your proximity to the lake.
So noted, sir. Thank you.
Any other questions or comments?
I think that's going to be a
Mr.
gas
Howard.
generator. It's not going to be diesel at the town hall.
Any other questions or comments? Terrific. All those in favor of line 1 signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed signify by saying nay. The ayes have it. Line 1 is adopted. Returning to line 3, any further comments or questions on line 3? Recognize the highway supervisor.
Hi, I'm Bob Brown, the highway surveyor. The highway department is looking to purchase and equip a utility body style truck. This truck will be used in multi-purpose tools for the highway department. It includes sign placement, repair for drainage, daily road maintenance. It'll be equipped with onboard air compressor for generator, hydraulic pump to allow operations of multiple tools while on the road, including saws, drills, pumps, grinders. The price also includes, obviously, radios and lighting for the vehicle. In the past, the highway department's been able to acquire an old ambulance, and we've been able to retrofit it to somewhat fill our needs. This is not the option for this year, and I don't see it coming up anytime soon. This vehicle that we have put in for would suit the needs for quite a few years coming in our department. I would ask that the people back me up as far as what the highway department needs as far as equipment goes. This isn't something frivolous we just asked for out of the clear blue. It was well thought out and well planned out with the taxpayers in mind to get the most use out of 4 people on the road during the daytime. It cuts back on the amount of times people are running back and forth to the garage. All right?
Very good. Thank you, Mr. Brown. Any other questions or comments on line 3? Seeing none, all those in favor of line 3, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, nay.
Nay.
The ayes have it. Line 3 is adopted. Line 5 has also been held. Any questions or comments? Ms. Norton.
Patty Norton, 31 Indian Path. I have a question. How is this different from on the special town meeting tonight? Article 8.
Mr. Hayes.
We're going to reconfigure, for anyone that is familiar with the Indian Head entrance, we're reconfiguring. Right now you can walk in through and go through the door and you are talking to the secretary. You are in the building. You are past the building, you are past the office, you are in the building. Everyone knows that school safety is of the utmost important in the lives that we all live in today. So we're going to be reconfiguring it so you're locked out of the building. We're going to be changing the wall structure, so when you come through the office, you will go to a window and be stuck so you can't move unless the doors are open. It goes to very similar to the card access, but we're going to also be putting interior door card access. We will be doing this with our own equipment, and Mr. Sandlin's here, who's our expert on this subject. We're not subbing this out, we're doing this. This is for the parts and the stuff that we're doing ourselves as a district to save the people in the town money. So we're trying to make the entrance to that school much more secure than it is today.
Ms. Norton.
I understand that, but how is this different money from what you wanted earlier in the special warrant on number 8? You're asking for the same thing. Indian Head and Hanson Middle School replacement of deterrent exterior doors and card access. That's what you just said, and this is for upgrade card access.
The card access is only part of it. The card access for the exterior doors.
Okay.
The interior doors are also going to have card access, but that's a minor part of the spending. We're asking for this money under the explanation. We've got to reconfigure the ceilings, the walls, the windows, and put in more security with doors, newer doors for interior card access to make the school safer.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Any other questions or comments on line 5? Seeing none, all those in favor of line 5, please signify by saying aye. Aye. All those opposed, nay. The ayes have it. Line 5 is adopted. Now on Article 10 as a whole, it has been seconded. Any questions or comments on the article as a whole? Seeing none, all those in favor of Article 10 signify by saying aye. Aye. All those opposed, nay. The ayes have it. Article 10 is adopted. Article 11, Mr. Norton.
Didn't know I had this one, sorry.
That's quite all right. Take your time.
Just a moment. Must have a third blue sheet. I move the town to vote and transfer $24,108 from free cash to capital accounts for the following Whitman Hanson Regional School to update interior and exterior cameras.
Second.
Seconded. Mr. Norton.
This is the security cameras at the high school that are 13 years old and now failing. All existing cameras will be replaced and new cameras added to new locations.
Any questions or comments on Article 11? Mr. Campbell.
Joe Campbell from 150 Woodbine Ave. I'd just like to ask that the school department, if there are any cameras that are left over or recording devices, that if they are operable at any point, can they be donated to another building in town that could use them, such as the food pantry or something like that?
Mr. Hayes?
Joe, we'd be more than happy to give you any of the cameras that we have that are failing to put anywhere else in town. What the upgrade is, ladies and gentlemen, to further explain, as you know, cameras get older, and again, with the security of what's going on in today's world with schools, we are adding new locations for cameras to keep different parts of the building more secure. For example, students will be students. You tell them not to prop the door open, but they prop the door open because it's easy to go out this door and come in this door. Well, with cameras at those entrances and the security front desk, it'll be much easier to monitor and say, hey, wait a minute, the gym door's open. Somebody go secure that door. Somebody watch what's going on at that door. We're trying to make the buildings more secure for the safety and security of the staff and students. I think it's prudent to do that. because safety and security is it's not just education in today's world, as we all know from past history. Safety and security is part of it. Thank you.
As the father of a senior at Whitman Hanson, I am shocked to hear that teenagers do not listen when they're told to do something. Shocking. Any other questions or comments on Article 11? Seeing none, all those in favor of Article 11 signify by saying aye. Aye. All those opposed, nay. Article 11 is adopted. Article 12, Chief Thompson. Chief, I have a point of information here. I understood it was tradition that if there's a new deputy chief, they had to carry all these articles. No? Well, we can acknowledge our new deputy chief. Congratulations.
I think he's making up for last year when I didn't come.
So, Chief.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. I move the town vote to raise through borrowing.
Yeah, we're missing the microphone.
Hello?
Yep.
Okay. I move the town vote to raise through borrowing $600,000 to purchase and equip a new fire engine, and that to meet this appropriation, the treasurer, with the approval of the selectmen, is authorized to borrow said amount under the pursuant to Chapter 44, Section 7, Subsection 1 of the general laws, or pursuant to any other enabling authority, and to issue bonds or notes of the town.
Second.
Seconded. Chief Thompson.
These funds are requested to purchase and equip a new fire engine to replace a 1986 Maxim pumper with a pumper that has more water and pump capacity.
This requires a 2/3 vote. Any questions or comments on Article 12? Yes, please.
Audrey Miller, 974 East Washington. I just wanted to know, have you had circumstances where you've gone to a call and your pump did not provide enough capacity or water?
Chief.
Through you, Mr. Moderator, to the previous speaker. Our vehicles are maintained routinely. However, we have a capital plan in place. The answer to your question is no. We've had failures in the past, but not recently. And the purpose to replace this truck is it's 32 years old and it's reached the end of its useful life.
Any other questions or comments? Seeing none, all those in favor of Article 12 signify by saying aye. Aye. All those opposed, nay. The ayes have it. Article 12 is adopted. Oh, I'm sorry. It was adopted by the required 2/3 vote. Thank you. Article 13, Mr. Hayes.
I move the town vote to approve $500,000 borrowing authorized by the Whitman Hanson Regional School District to pay the costs of designing and carrying out HVAC improvements at the Hanson Middle School, including the payment of all costs incidental or related.
There too.
There too.
Second?
Second.
Seconded. Mr. Hayes.
The project shall consist of providing a high-efficiency variable refrigerated flow VFR heat pumps, air conditioning system for the second floor classrooms and learning spaces at the Hanson Middle School located at 111 Liberty Street, Hanson, Mass. The middle school was constructed in 1998 and is approximately 157,000 square feet and consists of 2 floors. The existing building classrooms are heated and ventilated through the use of hot water classroom unit ventilator units, and currently do not have air conditioning. As part of this project scope, indoor ductless wall-mounted or ceiling-mounting AC units shall be installed within the classroom and shall be piped with insulated refrigeration piping to outdoor-grade or roof-mounted air-cooled heat pumps and condensing equipment. Multiple indoor units shall be connected to each outdoor condensing unit to maximize system sizing, efficiency, and diversity. A new direct digital control system shall be provided to control and monitor the VRF system. All newly installed systems shall be fully tested, adjusted, and commissioned.
Any questions or comments on Article 13? I thought you were going to a microphone, Dan. Any other questions or comments? Yes, ma'am. Did you hear that? Could you come to the microphone, please? I would normally repeat, but I don't think I got it all.
Sorry, Susan Burke, 1190 East Washington Street. Will this also take care of the new classrooms for the children coming from Indian Head up to the middle school, like the new classrooms?
Mr. Hayes?
Mr. Sandlin might be able to explain this better.
Please, if he would like to speak.
Mr. Moderator, Ernie Sandlin, Facility Manager, Whitman Hanson. The rooms that this will be air-conditioned is the second floor. The fifth grade are coming over, they're going to be on the first floor, so it will not air-condition the spaces that they're going to be in. That is on a future capital expenditure for that lower floor to be air-conditioned. But this article is for the second floor, 16 classrooms to be air-conditioned.
But down the road, they may get some air conditioning for the little guys? Yeah. Thank you.
Any other questions or comments? Seeing none, oh, is there a question? Oh, okay. It's like an auction, yeah, you gotta be careful. All right, Article 13, all those in favor of Article 13 is printed in the warrant, please, all those in favor of Article 13, please signify by saying aye. Aye. All those opposed, nay. Article 13 is adopted. Okay. All right. Article 14, Ms. Fitzgerald Kemet.
I move the town vote to authorize the Board of Selectmen to accept and enter into a contract for the expenditure of any allocated or to be allocated funds by the Commonwealth and/or county pursuant to GL Chapter 90 as printed in the warrant.
Second.
Seconded, Ms. Fitzgerald Kemet.
This article is a requirement of the Commonwealth of Massachusetts for the town of Hanson to accept state funding, including Chapter 90 funding for accepted roadways. This article authorizes use of funds which will be 100% reimbursed by the Commonwealth of Massachusetts. The budget approved each fiscal year by the legislature and governor establishes the total funding available for Chapter 90 local transportation aid for that year. These funds are then apportioned to the 351 Massachusetts towns and cities.
Any questions or comments on Article 14? Seeing none, all those in favor of Article 14 signify by saying aye. Aye. All those opposed, nay. The ayes have it. Article 14 is adopted. Article 15, Mr. Clemens.
I move that the town vote to raise and appropriate the sum of $5,000 to replenish the Conservation Fund for open space management and related conservation purposes.
Second.
Seconded, Mr. Clemens.
As written in the warrant, just to skim through, we need to implement our open space and recreation plan. This is one of the more important goals we have because it makes us eligible to apply for state grants of up to several $100,000 for all of these purposes. But we seek to protect land and link open spaces and trails to for public access with signage, parking spaces, informational kiosks, and so on. One example of how a small amount of money can be leveraged is this fund is now right now paying $7,000 to hire the Conway School of Landscape Design to create a draft design of a park for the hospital, and we feel this is something that will be, this is the kind of investment that will pay for itself many times over by helping us to move forward with planning these beneficial things in the town. And open space and trails are among the most valuable amenities for enhancing the value of property in a town and the quality of life there. Realtors and others, I think, would back that up. But we do recommend this article.
Any questions or comments on Article 15? Seeing none, all those in favor of Article 15 signify by saying aye. Aye. All those opposed signify by saying nay. The ayes have it. Article 15 is adopted. Article 16, Mr. Garvey.
I move the town vote to transfer from water surplus $80,000 to purchase 2 new trucks for the water department.
Second.
Seconded, Mr. Garvey.
The department needs to replace 2 vehicles due to age and the condition of the 2 trucks. One has been surplus to the town for their use, and the other will be auctioned off.
Any questions or comments on Article 16? All those in favor of Article 16 signify by saying aye. Aye. All those opposed, nay. The ayes have it. Article 16 is adopted. Article 17, Mr. Garvey.
I move the town transfer from water surplus $18,000 to purchase 2 storage containers for the water department.
Second.
Seconded. Mr. Garvey.
These 2 containers will be used to store the department's smaller equipment. These funds will also be used for concrete pads to put the containers on and to install overhead roofs.
Any questions or comments on Article 17? Seeing none, all those in favor of Article 17 signify by saying aye. Aye. All those opposed, nay. The ayes have it. Article 17 is adopted. Article 18, Mr. Garvey.
I move the town transfer $40,000 from water surplus to upgrade our SCADA panel at the well field.
Second.
Seconded. Mr. Garvey.
The SCADA panel, which stands for Supervisory Control and Data Acquisition System, which is located at the deep well in the VFD room, is outdated. The panel was installed back in 1984 when the well was put in and is no longer compatible with our new upgraded SCADA computer at the office.
Any questions or comments? Can Mr. Vest have the old computer? All those in favor of Article 18 signify by saying aye. Aye. All those opposed signify by saying nay. The ayes have it. Article 18 is adopted. Article 19, Mr. Mitchell.
I move to pass over Article 19.
We have a second?
Second.
Seconded. All those in favor of passing over Article 19 signify by saying aye. Aye. All those opposed, nay. The ayes have it. Article 19 is passed over. Article 20, Mr. McGann.
I move to pass over Article 20.
Second.
Seconded. All those in favor of passing over Article 20 signify by saying aye. Aye. All those opposed, nay. The ayes have it. Article 20 is passed over. Article 21, Mr. Hayes.
I move to pass over Article 21, Mr. Moderator, but I'd like to explain why.
Absolutely. Seconded. Mr. Hayes.
The committee met for about a year and a half. The regional agreement has not been updated since the 90s, so it had a lot of schools and schools, and they put in a great amount of time doing this. And we had people from both boards of selectmen, from finance committees. We had some citizens at large, and they did a fabulous job. When we got to the very end, it has to be voted by the selectmen. It has to have attorneys look at it. There was a little glitch in a couple of the last sentences, and the attorneys wanted it changed, and this happened as recent as a few days ago. So we are asking for the article to be passed over. We will be back with the new amended, updated agreement, so we're in the 21st century.
All those in favor of passing over Article 21, please signify by saying aye. Aye. All those opposed, nay. The ayes have it. Article 21 is passed over.
Article 22, Sean?
Article 22, Mr. McGann.
I move the town vote to approve the amended South Shore Vocational Technical Regional High School regional agreement dated October 31st, 2017, which is on file in the town clerk's office.
Second.
Seconded. Mr. McGann.
It stands as written in the warrant.
Pretty self-explanatory. Any questions or comments on Article 22? Seeing none, all those in favor of Article 22 signify by saying aye. Aye. All those opposed, nay. The ayes have it. Article 22 is adopted. Article 23, Ms. Fitzgerald Kemet.
I move the town vote to set the spending limits of the following revolving accounts in accordance with Hanson General Bylaw 2-9, Section 3, as printed in the warrant.
Second.
Seconded. Ms. Fitzgerald Kemet.
This article sets the spending limits for the annual revolving accounts, which have been consolidated into one article to streamline the warrant process.
Any questions or comments? Seeing none, all those in favor of Article 23 signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, nay. The ayes have it. Article 23 is adopted. Article 24, Mr. Hickey.
I move the town vote to amend its general bylaws, Articles 3-12, earth removal by adding in the title and bulk storage, and further amending by renumbering penalty as Section 6, and further amending by adding a new Section 5 entitled bulk storage as printed in the warrant.
Second.
Seconded. Mr. Hickey.
This article seeks to regulate storage of materials of excess amounts, the purpose of protecting the citizens and properties in adjacent proximity from dust and other particles, odors, and other nuisances. the Board of Selectmen would issue such licenses and impose conditions as it sees fit, such as tops or sealants.
Any questions or comments on Article 24? Yes, sir.
Mr. Moderator, my name is Bill Scott. I live on Indian Head Street here in Hanson. I'd like to speak out in opposition to this bylaw change. It's going to affect basically every homeowner in the town that decides to put on an addition on their home. It makes a comment about 30-day window of opportunity as far as an exemption from the bulk storage. But it's going to affect everybody that puts in a swimming pool. A 40-foot swimming pool is approximately 350 yards of material that's going to have to be moved and stored. I understand it's under the 500, but who's going to measure that? You know, you're going to get into all sorts of situations like that. It's going to affect the highway department because there's no provisions in there with respect to that. It's going to affect all businessmen, landscapers, anybody in the town that tries to run a business in that respect. So I do want to speak out in opposition to it. The cranberry growers are covered under what's called the Clean Water Act. Section 404 protects cranberry growers from any arbitrary or regulations that are put out by cities and towns to regulate their activities. They can do all sorts of things like create dikes, create roadways, and one of the biggest things that they have is the storage of sand. Sand is an important nutrient for cranberry operation. 500 yards is like a snowflake in the amount of material that's going to be needed for those operations. I also think the town will find itself in a litigation situation if they try to go towards cranberry operation to stop that. The cranberry growers are instructed, I'm a cranberry grower, I'm an ocean spray grower in Wareham. We're instructed to work with our neighbors and try to be as compatible, but people buy a house next to an airport and all of a sudden they're complaining about the noise, or a shooting range. Well, now if we're next to a cranberry bog and they don't understand how it operates, this is a knee-jerk reaction to a problem that should be decided on its merits, not by putting this garbage in the town warrant. Thank you.
Now, sir, you're a visitor to the town meeting, right? Oh, no, not you, Mr. Scott. Typically, visitors aren't allowed to speak unless prior authorized, but if you'd like to state your interest.
Mr. Chairman, and I would honor whatever your wishes are. I am a taxpayer in the town of Hanson. We run about 220 acres of land in the town of Hanson.
Could you just give your name and...
Stanley Kravitz, Bridgewater, Mass., 140 Lyman Place.
And your business, sir?
I'm a cranberry grower.
If there's no objection, I see no reason not to.
Thank you. One of the problems with this legislation is I understand there was a problem in town this past year, and I'm totally sympathetic to that. However, silica, which is sand, is very well regulated by EPA, DEP, and by OSHA. The new silica laws by OSHA are almost unworkable. So there's plenty of protection in place. The problem comes if we have an opportunity to sand to promote our cranberry bogs, it's weather related. I don't have 5 days, 10 days in advance to put this pile together. It has to come in fresh the day I get the weather. I need 6 inches of ice. The day I get it, I gotta go. I gotta pile that sand and I gotta move forward. If I'm rebuilding a bog, same thing. Totally try to respect our neighbors. I've never had a pile within, I'd say, 700 feet of any neighbor. I will continue to do that. I would be happy to work with any part of the town on helping to limit it, but this is totally prohibitive to our operation. I don't know the legalities of it. I did call the Attorney General's office yesterday when I heard about this and asked them to check into legalities of limiting a normal agricultural process. I did talk to DOJ about the same thing because those are both federal and state laws. I don't believe the towns can supersede. I'm not here telling anybody their business. If you folks have a right to do it, I will honor it. I will try to work with it the best I can. Going to make it very difficult for us to maintain our open space. Thank you for the opportunity.
Thank you. Any other questions or comments? Mr. Vess? Oh, I'm sorry, you'll be called right after that.
Good evening, everybody. My name's Mark Best, 303 High Street. I actually worked the local bogs in times of unemployment during my lifetime, and one of the jobs that we did was sanding. So, as the previous gentleman just said, it's absolutely imperative for the cranberry bog operator to have its materials in place prior to the actual sanding process. They may get several weeks of cold weather where they can replenish the sand on the cranberry bogs, or they may get just a few days opportunity to put all of that sand out in the bogs. And the other thing is I'm particularly familiar with the Hanson cranberry bogs, having been in town for over 60 years, and there has always been stockpiled material, sand, silica sand, as spoken before, and it never created a problem that I was aware of. As a matter of fact, as a kid, we used to play on the sand piles down there. So subsequently, I don't think tonight's question is valid or helps this particular business in our town. It's a large amount of acreage. The cranberry industry is still fairly robust here on the South Shore, and I'm not so sure we have a right to tell them how to run their business. So I would ask you to vote this article down and let these folks do what they need to do to keep their business operating. Thank you very much.
Yes, ma'am. Could I have your name and address, please?
Danielle Sheehan, Rosewood Drive. Rosewood Drive started this bylaw, and I invite any of you who question it to please come down to our area on a windy day. We're not asking them to not do cranberry bogs. We understand the importance of it. My husband and I are in landscaping and trucking and deal with sand as well all day long, but there's a 4,000-yard pile of sand out there that when the wind blows is blowing in our faces. Our kids can't play outside. Our outdoor hockey rinks in the wintertime can't go up because the sand is melting the ice. We have it in our windowsills. We have it under our doors. We have it in our cars. Like I said, our kids can't go outside. On a nice day, we can't be in our backyards enjoying the weather and having cookouts. 4th of July last year, we had to go in because the sand is flying through our neighborhood. 20 years I have lived on Rosewood Drive, and we have never had a problem with the bogs out there. We used to ride our dirt bikes out there, no problems, until a year and a half ago. They took it out of the hill, which I believe is in violation of the earth removal bylaw, and they've bulk piled it there. We're not, again, smaller piles spread throughout his land, all the power to you. You do not need 4,000 yards of sand just sitting there. Making new bogs, sanding your bogs in the wintertime does not use 4,000 yards of sand. So we're looking to compromise. They are not being a good neighbor, and I'm not sure if that's his bog or not. I don't know who owns it. But we've tried to work with that bog owner, and he just tells us what we want to hear, and then 2 days later we still can't go outside. So we're open to suggestions. We've been trying to work with the town and the bog owner for over a year now. So this was what the town came up with. So I ask if anybody questions. I don't have time to be, the amount of time I put into this. I already have 2 full-time jobs. But if you think we're making it up, why would we? You know, there's a reason for it, and I just ask that you support it or you help us come up with another solution, because my kids were just so distraught when we couldn't put up our rink this year, and when they have to come in because the sand is in their eyes and they can't play outside. So I ask that we come to some kind of conclusion, because this has to come to an end. Thank you.
We're going to go to Ms. Fitzgerald Kemet, and then we'll hear from you, sir.
I think everybody here knows the importance of cranberry growers in this town. They're fundamental to the town. They're the backbone of the town. This was not an attempt. It was an attempt to be responsive to what Mrs. Sheehan has articulated. And if you read this, it does not apply to individuals. It applies to businesses. It's very specific in the bylaw. Also, really, all this is attempting to do is, if you are a cranberry grower or you're somebody who's going to have bulk storage, It's just an annual permit. You're just annually asking for a permit to store materials. It really isn't attempting to hamstring anybody or stop them from farming. We completely respect the role that that plays in town.
Yes, sir.
And I thank you. I thank you for that attitude. And to your words, ma'am, I'm not the cranberry grower that I understand had the problem. I guess he doesn't have the guts to be here. And it's not right, because he makes the rest of us look bad. We've cohabitated with our neighbors for over 100 years. A rich history in the town of Hanson. But the silica laws are so strong now. And my understanding, and I don't know what happened in that case because I just heard about it, it went to court, and the court went, unfortunately, with the grower. And really, it should have gone to DEP and the silica thing with a health problem, because that's an easy one to substantiate. I worked in the health field for almost 30 years. And I would be happy to work with you and show you how to help solve that problem. But don't take a broad brush and paint the rest of us with it. So I would ask that agriculture make a motion that agriculture be exempted from this bylaw. And I know, talking to other legitimate growers in town, we'd be happy to participate to help rule ourselves. We would be happy to do that.
What I would suggest, sir, is if you could have Mr. Scott propose an amendment as a town member and provide it to the clerk, and that would be the best way to deal with that. But yes, ma'am.
Hi, Audrey Miller, East Washington Street. So my husband's family lived on a bog, grew up on a bog. They had many years of great experiences on the bog, but as we know, bogs get changed over and there's new managers and such. And I will say his family had a very difficult time when they started piling stuff and encroaching on their pond and their property. So it is nice to know that the towns are addressing and they have somebody to go to, because I know there was a lot of legal issues and it was a really difficult fight when all of a sudden there was somebody who wasn't so respectful to the neighbors and literally started taking over their property. But I think from what Laura is saying, it looks as though the bogs, as long as they're not causing any problems, will get a license annually, correct?
Right, yep.
Okay.
Yes.
Ms. Fitzgerald, come.
That is my understanding. Certainly, I hope legal counsel would chime in if I'm misguided on that point.
Yes, sir.
And that's a wonderful idea in theory, but you're looking at over 30 days. If we have a drought like we did 2 years ago, our bogs were ready to, in fact, I lost a farm on School Street. All right, it dried up and blew away. Now, I'm going to rebuild that farm this year. It's going to cost me somewhere in the vicinity of $280,000 to rebuild 7 acres, because I wasn't able to go in and dig my reservoir out because I couldn't get equipment. But if I have that opportunity, I'm going to pile more than 500 yards of sand so I can get water to water the vines so they don't blow away. And I can't come to the Board of Selectmen because I don't have that day off. I'm sorry. And I have to do it a specific day. We never can tell when our water's going down. Our water table has gone down since, I don't know what Brockton's doing down there in Hanson, taking water and not replenishing it with a return treated water. But that's a different story. But it's almost impossible to work with. It really is. I mean, we get emergency provisions. We have to wait for DEP to give us emergency provisions. Then we have to come back to the town. We're out of business by then.
Yeah, I would almost see that as just a de facto like annual renewal. Like you wouldn't wait until you needed it. You would anticipate that at some point you would need it, and you'd apply and would just annually renew it. That's
I don't know which reservoir may give me trouble, which waterway may give me trouble. How do I know? How do I know until it happens? I never had problems on Chandler Mill Reservoir. Never had problems. All of a sudden that went dry 3 years ago. I had to dig for water. If I have to come back to the Board of Selectmen that 1 week, I'm not pumping water for that week. I lose, if nothing else, I lose a crop for the year, but I also may lose the farm. I just think that agriculture should be exempt. There are enough laws, both federally and statewide, to address silica dust. Silica is a health hazard, one of the most stringent health hazards controlled by the federal government in the state today. The court system doesn't do it. Those are the people that do it, and the Department of Public Health in Boston does it. I've worked with those committees for years. They can do something in 24 hours.
All righty, thank you very much, sir. I think we've gotten both sides You have something new, Mr. Scott.
There's some folks who were talking about volume and what have you. It takes approximately 100 yards of sand to sand an acre of cranberries. So 22 acres is 2,200 yards of material. So it's almost impossible for a grower to live under this regulation. And as I suggested earlier, it is arbitrary, it is capricious, it's a knee-jerk. I feel bad for this lady that she's got the problem. But if the town chooses to vote this, I would move to amend the article to exclude agriculture from as a town resident, from this bylaw change. I don't like it at all. I think it's going to affect landscapers. Hanson has had a long history of being unfriendly to business. You're going to drive more people away. Thank you.
Yes, ma'am.
I have to say, my husband and I are purchasing property in town. We will have piles. We are a landscape construction company. We will have to abide by these as well. Again, if there was never a problem, then we would have never gotten to this point. Matthew has already done DEP as far as I know. So if this man can help, we just need this problem solved. And this is what the town came up with. We need a solution where our kids can go outside and play and we live harmoniously together. That bog owner in the past, like I said, 20 years never had a problem. And like that woman said, it changed hands and everything changed. So this was the way for us to be able to, us have a right. He's not even paying his taxes on that land, all of it. We pay ours, so.
We'll leave that aside. Thank you very much.
But I am also impacted by that as a landscaper. I'm willing to live within those rules to be a good neighbor to the people around me.
Thank you. Mr. McGann.
I walked down Rosewood Ave. I saw the impact. I saw the damage. We have had significant windstorms over the past year, right? We've seen trees falling. It's been more and more, okay? I saw the size of this pile. Matt, she refers to, was from the Board of Health, who did take every avenue he possibly could to try to address the problem. We met with the person, or he spoke with the manager in charge of the bog. I saw the damage that it caused to some of the neighborhoods there, okay? We didn't want to have to do this, but this had to be, we had to put some sort of control in place so that if it comes down to it, the Board of Selectmen can take action to it. I heard the example used that, if you move to an airport and then you complain, yeah, that makes sense. But if I move to it near a bog, I wouldn't simply think that somebody's going to store that much sand in that area and that it would impact me in that such way. And maybe that's my ignorance, but I don't think that's really something that you could foresee, like living next to an airport. It makes sense for us to put this control in place so that if we need to take action, because the Board of Selectmen we do want to honor cranberry growers, we want to encourage businesses to come in here. Okay, we're not going to try to do this deliberately to hamper, but we need to put something in control to protect our citizens and the property. The biggest line in here reads, the Board of Selectmen would issue such license and impose conditions as it sees fits, such as tops and sealants. Okay, sealants were applied to that pile before, I was told, and then they were removed. Somehow somebody walked across it, whatever, okay? We could have placed tops there. We offered tires from the transfer station if they bought tops down and put them across it. So solutions were tried, sir. We tried everything we possibly could, but we need to put this control in place so that when the time, or if the time should come, we can protect the citizens of Hanson.
Mr. Campbell, briefly.
Yes, Mr. Moderator, through you to the resident that had the issue. The fine gentleman that spoke on behalf of the growers said that there was a response from Boston. They can respond within 24 hours. In your experience, did you get a 24-hour response down in that area? Thank you. This provides local regulation at our town level. Thank you.
Yes, sir. Briefly.
I think we should give it some time for those two cranberry growers to talk to the one that's causing this problem, and allow time for them to help solve this couple's problem, and then we can take it up in the next October.
So noted. All those in favor of Article 24 signify by saying aye. Aye. All those opposed signify by saying nay. Nay. It's too close for me to determine. So if you could, you were given a voting card when you came in. The blue the blue voting card. All those in favor of Article 24, please hold up your blue voting card and allow time for the tellers to count.
Mr. Walsh.
Votes for it. It's 5-0 by the selectmen.
Mr. Armstrong?
15.
15. Mr. Campbell?
2020.
20. Mr. Norton?
32.
32. All those opposed to Article 24, please signify by holding your card up now.
Vote's going to be close.
Mr. Campbell, did you get behind you? Mr. Campbell?
10. 1-0.
10. Mr. Armstrong?
9.
9.
Are you still counting?
Slow, but he's very careful. Mr. Norton?
54.
54. So by a vote of 73 to 67, is that correct, Madam Clerk? Article 24 is not adopted.
So
Article 25, Mr. Mitchell.
vote to pass over, right?
I move to pass over Article 25.
We have a motion to move over, to pass over Article 25. Is there a second?
Yes, second.
Seconded by Mr. Howard. All those in favor of passing over Article 25 signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, nay. The ayes have it. Article 25 is passed over. Article 26, Mr. Weeks.
I move the town, can you hear me okay?
Not yet. Try again.
Hello? There we
Yep.
go. I move the town vote to amend the Town of Hanson Land Use Regulations Zoning Bylaw, Section 6A3, 6B3, 6C3, 6D3, 6E3, minimum frontage requirements for each zoning districts as printed in the warrant.
Second.
Seconded, Mr. Weeks.
To change the way frontage is calculated, where a lot has frontage on 2 or more streets, it may use the frontage from any one of those streets to meet the minimum frontage required lot frontage.
Any questions or comments on Article 26? Mr. Campbell.
Surely, Mr. Marty, through you, Joe Campbell. I'm also the vice chairman of the planning board. The planning board actually voted this as a 3-2 vote. I'm one of the 2 that's in opposition of it. There's a handout that would show the lots that would be affected by this if this was to go through tonight. If folks don't know, this came before the town in 2001. It was defeated back then by a huge majority. And on top of that, it's already regulated. This kind of thing is already regulated. If you wanted to have any kind of a variance, you'd go see our zoning board of appeals. So there's no reason to make these laws any less. As far as the corner lots and the areas being developed, I spoke with many people that are developers themselves, and what this provides, the fact that we have this corner lot frontage on both areas, it provides an opportunity for a builder to build smartly, and that's one of the things that the planning board would like to attain moving into the future. So all it does is make it so that people that want to come into the town of Hanson and build, that they make their developments smart. They build them so that they don't have lots that are just for no reason to, stretched out. Some of the corner lots that we have here, they've been made so that they're stretched out. They're larger lots. A lot of people have come up to me and said to me that they like the fact that when they drive into the neighborhood, you have to drive a whole lot away from the main road before you get to the development itself. It separates them from the main streets. So changing these laws would make it so that the regulation is less. And it's we already have the ZBA enforcement, so if somebody wanted to come in and change that, they'll go before the ZBA. It's already regulated. Thank you.
Mr. Weeks?
I think as far as the planning board goes, Mr. Campbell said it eloquently that it was a 3-2 vote in favor of this bylaw change. I think that there's a couple different reasons why we wanted to propose it. This was actually something that was incredibly important to the previous town planner who presented it to us as something that we wanted to look at. We were unaware, again to Joe's point, that this was presented in the past. That had no bearing on us reintroducing this. It is very similar language. But our previous town planner introduced this to us. She felt it was good for subdivisions primarily. This actually affects very few lots. It doesn't affect the setbacks at all. It's actually, I think, going to beautify the town as far as subdivisions go. A lot of the times when you're driving down subdivisions, what happens is you end up carving out the front lot. And what that does is it usually either turns into either what we call a dead lot, which means nothing really happens and there's very little maintenance ever happening there, or it turns into a retention pond. And I don't know about you, but I don't like looking at a retention pond as you're driving into a subdivision. I care about the aesthetics of the town. There are some grandfathered lots that do exist. I don't think that they're actually going to be buildable under this lot and some under these changes. Other ones are going to be grandfathered in anyways. I also do know that there are some towns that have similar issues with similar bylaws, and they don't like it. Their town planners are not okay with it. There are many surrounding towns that don't even have a bylaw. We are just one that actually has a bylaw regarding this. And then there are ones that just believe that they should be changing it themselves. And our town planner and building inspector both believe that this is something that should change. Again, it's just one of those things. I think it's beautiful on the planning board that we can have disagreements, chair, vice chair, and with other people, and we can still walk away, despite the raspberries that he had blown at me. So with that being said, I do think that this is good for the town. I think it is something that we should consider, and I think it'll beautify the surrounding area.
Any other questions or comments on Article 26? Ms. Marini.
Kathy Marini. I'm a member of the Board of Assessors and have been for many years. We have in the past, with some previous planning boards, ended up with lots or parcels at the beginning of subdivisions, which are used either for drainage or the developer just cuts them off. Pays taxes on that small piece of land until they leave town, and if they don't either get out of the business or don't intend to build anything else in Hanson, they stop paying taxes, and eventually the town ends up owning those lots, and we collect no tax from them. And strictly from the Board of Assessors, we want every piece of land taxed fairly, and the town doesn't need to own little tiny pieces of land, like at the end of Sydney Lane along Main Street is one. It's just a dead piece of land. I think one of the neighbors may take care of it a little bit now and again, but I think we need to avoid that situation, and I think this bylaw change would help that. Thank you.
Any other questions or comments? Yes, sir.
Don Ellis, 742 High Street, on the planning board. I'd just like to say the other towns that don't have this bylaw, which are quite a few, and I'll name them off. It's Abington, Whitman, Hanover does have this bylaw, Pembroke doesn't, Halifax doesn't. It's really not worth why it was put in. Years ago they put it in for whatever reason, and we've tried to do it in the past, is come up with a vile way to make this work. We've had zoning bylaw committees look at this in the past for years for the planning boards, and they couldn't come up with another solution to eliminate the problems of what happens. It's aesthetics, it's taxes, it's all the above. if they come into town and they have a 40-foot or 50-foot easement or right-of-way to get into the property and develop it, and they don't have enough, they only have 10 feet on a corner lot, that would prohibits them from being able to develop their land. So what they do is they include that in the layout of the road, or they'll put a retention pond in it, or something like that, and it's just not worth it. That's why other towns don't have it. And they don't, you know, they're amazed that we do have it. And most of the building departments and the planning boards are against it from other towns.
Through you, Mr. Moderator, just to clarify what Planning Board Member Ellis is saying, he's talking about the law that's already on the books, not the one that we're talking about tonight.
Mr. Moderator, just to reiterate, the plan has been on the books for many, many years, folks. One of the things it does, it can definitely change the character of the town. So if you like Hanson being rural, that won't happen anymore.
I didn't realize planning board meetings were so exciting.
Yeah, very exciting.
I'm going to have to start attending. My goodness. All right. I think we've heard both sides at this point. All those in favor of Article 26 signify by saying aye. Aye. All those opposed, nay. Nay. I have the nays being in the majority. Does anybody object? Mr. Ellis objects. I am shocked. All righty. Could all those who are in favor of Article 26 please hold your blue card up until the tellers have had a chance to count?
And it's a two-thirds vote.
And that's not noted on here.
It is.
Two-thirds vote.
I should tell you that it's a two-thirds vote required to pass this.
I don't think so.
No, it's not.
Really
Flushed.
No, complete opposite, like
Red?
pale.
Oh, pale?
Yeah. Usually you look red. You look pale.
Because I usually look red because I'm wearing a tie. I don't know what it is.
That'd be not coming down or something.
Maybe I didn't eat enough.
For your purposes, but also I'm sitting.
I know.
Nine?
Yes, sir.
Mr. Armstrong has 9. Mr. Campbell?
10.
10. Mr. Norton?
27.
27. All those opposed, please signify by holding your card up at this time. Mr. Campbell?
16.
16. Mr. Armstrong? Oh.
We did it again.
Mr. Norton?
42.
42. Mr. Armstrong?
11.
11. By a vote of 46 to 69, Article 26 fails to get the two-thirds vote required. Article 26 is not adopted. Article 27, Mr. Weeks. Now which one? Oh, this is the marijuana one. See, I knew we were going to have a long discussion about a plant coming in, but I didn't expect it to be cranberries. Mr. Weeks, Article 27.
Through you, Mr. Moderator, I move the town vote to amend the Town of Hanson zoning bylaws by amending Section 6 to add a new subsection M, marijuana establishments, as allowable by special permit in the districts identified in subsection 6M4, and further to amend the table of contents as printed in the warrant.
Seconded. Mr. Weeks.
To provide for the establishment of marijuana establishments in appropriate places and under strict conditions to minimize the adverse impacts of marijuana establishments on adjacent properties, residential neighborhoods, local historic districts, schools, and other places where children congregate, and to regulate the siting, design, placement, security, safety, monitoring, modification, and removal of marijuana establishments.
I think I know the answer to this, but are there any comments or questions about Article 27? Mr. Soper.
Through you,
Mr. Moderator. I have a question for the Board of Selectmen. Having served on the Board of Selectmen, I know at times the board decides to pass things on to the voters, and I know the horse has left the barn on this particular situation. So now we're sitting here trying to decide where we're going to put a marijuana retail establishment or some type of dispensary. The state of Massachusetts passed a marijuana bill back in 2016 or 2017, I can't remember which, by a close margin. 189 communities have put a restriction on it. Another 25 communities have decided that they're going to put other regulations. So we have over 200 communities out of 365 monitoring or controlling or saying no to marijuana, to recreational marijuana. How is it that the town of Hanson's in the majority, in the minority on this particular action?
Is this to the planning board, to the?
This is for the Board of Selectmen, and why isn't this gone to a vote for the town to say whether they want marijuana in this town or they don't want marijuana?
I think we vote, hold on, we voted.
One moment. I'm sorry.
Mr. Mitchell.
Last year, I know the planning board tried to pass a moratorium to put it off for a year so we could discuss it once the state came back and had rules and regulations. And town meeting said, no, move forward. I don't know if you weren't at that meeting or not, but it was pretty clear the voters want to move forward. And also the voters of Hanson voted yes at that ballot that you're referring to in 2016 and 2017.
I know.
Now, if towns voted no, then the state allowed towns to opt out completely, and you can close the door, no pot shops. But if it was yes, then it's a different avenue you have to travel.
I would respectfully disagree, Mr. Mitchell. Whitman did a 180 or a 365. They voted for marijuana, and just recently at their special town meeting, they voted against pot shops in Whitman.
Mr. Keeley.
Point of order, Mr. Kemet. Yeah, you've got to come to the microphone, I'm afraid.
I'm sorry, but this philosophical debate has really nothing to do with this bylaw. All we're trying to do with this bylaw is make sure that all these pot shops at least go where we want them to go, rather than having them go anywhere they want. So that's really what this is about. And that the next issue at a later date would be a bylaw to not have them at all.
Ms. Fitzgerald Kemet.
Through you, Mr. Moderator, to Mr. Soper. Mr. Soper, I think what you're asking is the board thinking, or have we thought about potentially bringing this back to the voters to decide one more time with feeling whether they would like to have recreational marijuana? I can only speak for myself, but I know that I would like to have the new Board of Selectmen discuss this and certainly get some input from people. But I think the important piece tonight is what we've seen is Hanson voted in the majority for the state ballot to allow recreational marijuana, and then voted down the moratorium. So where we're at right now, and I'm certainly not saying that we couldn't be somewhere else at next year's annual town meeting, but where we are right now is we have no moratorium, and the town did vote in the majority to have recreational marijuana. So the best we can do to mitigate any potential impact of anybody coming in who may want to set up a recreational marijuana facility would be to follow the lead of the planning board, which is to zone where these folks can set up, and at least we can control that piece. There is, of course, lead time with hearings and all kinds of other stuff before somebody could actually set up shop. But the best we can do to protect Hanson's interests would be to make sure that we are zoning where they can go, and we're not opening up the floodgates and allowing people to locate wherever they want.
Mr. Weeks.
Just to give some people some insight as to the process, and to reiterate just a little bit about what was just talked about, but also to elaborate on some of the other processes and possible scenarios that could come after tonight's vote. As a result of the original vote, it was brought back and it was asked by the planning board to create the moratorium. We helped write that moratorium that was presented at the last town meeting. Consequently, it was voted down, and as a result of that, we now have to deal with that vote, and we have to figure out where it's going to go next. Now, I do know that we did have very recently a public hearing in which it was pretty well attended by residents of the town. We also were blessed with the presence of our police chief here, and he made it very well known that when that moratorium was shot down, it makes their jobs harder. So we are very mindful of that. Now, what happens is that when you vote in recreational marijuana and you vote down a moratorium, which would have given people about a year, which is the whole point of the moratorium, to create bylaws and give yourself some leeway to figure out where you want to go, we don't have the luxury of time anymore. So as of right now, we have to figure out where they're going to go. Now, it is a fair question to say, you know, you can have a referendum and you can make that vote. That is a very good way of doing it, and that's fine. But unfortunately, that's not before the town right now. The planning board was asked, as a result of the vote at the polls, as well as the moratorium being shot down, we were asked, can you zone these places? And the reason being is because if we don't zone it, and or if we zone it and make it too restrictive, what happens? And remember that this is televised, so if you have someone that is incredibly passionate about opening up pot shops in Hanson, they're going to watch and they're going to be very keen on what the laws are right now. And if they make it too restrictive, we shoot it down, we don't give enough leeway, then there is a possibility in which litigation can come against the town, and then we find ourselves opening up to really anywhere within the confines of the law, and it may go somewhere where we just don't want it to go. So the idea is, right now, we need to zone it. However, there is nothing to say that you can't have a referendum after the fact. If you want to go that route, and if the Board of Selectmen wants to go that route, if the new board coming on wants to go that route, there is nothing stopping a referendum from happening after. But if we don't zone this, the consequences of someone seeing this and going and opening up anywhere or suing the town or doing whatever they want to do is far outweighs voting for the zoning right now. So I would suggest that people, really take this seriously, look at this, and think about the consequences that may come after the fact. The referendum isn't defeated with a vote tonight to approve the zones. We can do that, but we really need to be methodical about what we're going to do. I do think that zoning is the right way because we do have an affirmative vote. We did shoot down the moratorium, and we do not have a referendum question on the ballot coming up right now. So I do think that this is the best opportunity for us. And then maybe we should consider it, after this. If it goes that way, we should consider if the Board of Selectmen feel that that's appropriate. When these pot shops open up, if they go that route, the Board of Selectmen is also the appropriating authority as well. So they get to say where it goes, and they get to grant permits and whatnot. They're the authority in this.
All righty,
so,
Mr. Weeks.
Thank you very much.
Mr. Young.
No, it's been said that if this passes, people are going to start coming into Hanson, putting pot shops anywhere they want. I want to know what the true absolute consequences of the town not voting to pass this bylaw are. What are the consequences? What is the timeline when the CCC, the Cannabis Control Commission, as that's what we have now, they have to go and get licensed? What is the timeline on the first license that's being issued by the CCU to see what that timeline is, okay? And then, of course, everybody that wants to have a pot shop in Hanson has to first go to the CCC in Boston and apply for license there. Then they have to come back to Hanson and apply for license there. So what's the timeline? But I want to know what the true consequences are of the town not passing this article, okay?
I've been informed by town council that the licenses will start issuing June 1st. And so we won't have another town meeting before then. Mr. Weeks, briefly?
For the sake of brevity, everything I just said a little while ago. I mean that with all due respect. I mean, if someone's watching, they could absolutely litigate it against us. I mean, that is a possibility that could happen.
I believe, from what I've heard, Mr. Young, is that the consequence of not passing this is that somebody with a duly issued license would be free to open up shop anywhere in Hanson.
Yeah, they could.
So I think we've gotten the sides out on this one. All those in favor of Article 27 signify. Oh, yes, ma'am.
Ann Pell, Great Cedar Drive. So you're saying we need to put this in place to protect the town. Now, there's a map that was out front that I grabbed, and it shows the 4 different zoning areas. One of them is well, 2 of them are a great concern to me because I live in between them. So how are you going to notify the people in the area that a shop is looking to open? How much input are the local residents going to have besides just putting something in the Whitman Hanson Express boarding zone of appeals or whatever? How are you going to notify us so that we're aware, and can we object
Mr.
to
Weeks?
its placement?
Yeah, so it is, that's a great question. It is written out in the bylaw itself as to the process. It does go before the Board of Selectmen for final approval. So,
But do the residents of the area, are we allowed to have a say? Are you going to notify us before they come in?
the Board of Selectmen would do that. The planning board has no...
How is the Board of Selectmen going to let us know?
One moment. Mr. Weeks, could you complete your answer?
Yeah, I was going to say, I don't want to speak on behalf of the process that, the Board of Selectmen would instill, but that's outside the jurisdiction of the planning board, so I don't know what they would put in place. I would like to think they would let abutters know, but that really is a process that would be laid out by those folks. And
is that a fair question for me to ask tonight?
It is a fair question. Could we have the town council speak to that?
So the process for issuing special permits is abutters are notified depending upon, I don't know your exact location, but abutters are notified for the special permit hearing. But in addition, any facility a prospective facility is also required to have a community, I'm giving feedback, have a community impact hearing, which they also have to publicize in the newspaper as well. And then on top of it, the Board of Selectmen has to negotiate by law a host community agreement to mitigate some of the impacts that the community would feel.
Okay, so if the community was really dead set against where it might go, how much impact does the community have? How much say do we have in whether it goes in space A or they go to a different part of town? How much say do we have in that?
So,
or do we?
The special permits, number one, are bound by certain constraints. I mean, it's an allowable use by special permit. So, provided they meet certain conditions, typically the special permit granting authority has the right to impose conditions, and that's usually what would be upheld. The real authority, though, is with the Board of Selectmen in their negotiation of a host community agreement. In that situation, you're not required to impose conditions. You have to just make a true assessment of whether or not it's a use in that particular site that is appropriate.
Okay, thank you.
Peg Kitchenham, 75 Fairwood Drive. There are 4 sites on that map. I wonder why that number. Could we eliminate it and only have 2 sites available in town or something of that sort? Is that a kind of amendment that could be made at this? 4 sites seems a lot for a town that obviously has some questions about whether it really wants it.
yeah, so...
the town council, please.
So the one thing you have to be very careful of in a community like the town of Hanson that voted yes on question 4 is to create a bylaw that is overly restrictive and it essentially creates a de facto prohibition, because then if there's a de facto prohibition, this could lead to litigation, and the argument would be that you didn't follow the correct mechanism to pass that particular bylaw, because for yes communities where you're prohibiting one or more of the uses, including what you would call zoning out the use, it's kind of like a backdoor way to prohibit, you would need both a ballot and a bylaw. And we don't have that opportunity right now because the ballot is already set.
the words out of my mouth.
Mr. Hayes.
Ladies and gentlemen, keep in mind, the marijuana bylaws, as Mr. Weeks has said, has passed. The problem that I see as representing you and your children is, both of our elementary schools are on the main corridor through the town of Hanson. They have sidewalks that go by every single one of these flex zones. It's not just in the 4 maps that Mr. Weeks said, as town council just said. They can petition and say it's restrictive and maybe put one next to Shaw's, where the students are walking home every day. It's the only place we have sidewalks. You need to restrict this type of business so it's not on the main corridors where your elementary schools are. I mean, seriously? That's the only place in town that Hanson has sidewalks and students are allowed to walk. I'm not saying I'm for or against marijuana. I'm saying I think we need to not have it anywhere near school zones or school districts where kids that are young could make a bad decision. So please, please have this zone somewhere away from school districts. Whether it's changing a bylaw or doing it tonight, I'm not sure of the mechanism. We're talking about protecting children. Thank you.
If we have this number of sites now, could we choose to reduce that perhaps at some point in the future?
Mr. Weeks?
After taking some other kind of vote or something?
Yeah, absolutely. And you know, to add to what our town attorney had said, even having a zoned section in which businesses are already there and have no way of leaving, that also could be justified as saying that it's too restrictive. So we want to make sure that we have met the minimum qualifications to make sure that we are not being prohibitive. However, I think that we can make any changes we need to, including having a referendum if we wanted to.
Very briefly, Mr. Clemens, I'd like to bring this to a vote.
Right, Phil Clemens, 46 Main Street, Hanson. I'm just curious, a little confused. We have a zoning, a district proposed that in many, many places sort of cuts a parcel in half. Why would you draw a district that would cut parcels in half, whether it's currently commercial or residential? Because there's a mix on here. Wouldn't that make it more confusing as to where you could and couldn't put the things? Why not follow the parcel lines that exist now?
Mr. Weeks?
So I think it does follow the parcel lines.
Most assuredly it does not. You can see it with your eyes on these handouts.
Okay, so, well, you know, the long and the short of how we picked out those carvings was working in conjunction with actually outlining it during our public hearing and trying to figure out what the best way to do it was. We picked lots and parcels that were less restrictive and kind of had a slight setback to some of the businesses that were there, and as a result the lines were drawn based off of that. So we were trying to find opportunities in which we made it we zoned it appropriately, but we tried to make it somewhat restrictive so that you could kind of set them off the road a little bit so it didn't get middle schoolers and folks walking down the street. So they were just carefully chosen areas. That's how we decided.
Very good. I'm going to call the vote. All those in favor of Article 27, please signify by saying aye. Aye. All those opposed signify by saying nay. And this requires a 2/3. This has to be done by 2/3, and I find that the ayes have it by 2/3. Article 27 is adopted. Article 28, Mr. Weeks.
I move the town vote to accept the provisions of Mass General Laws, Chapter 64N, Section 3, to impose a 3% local sales tax on the sale or transfer of marijuana or marijuana products by a marijuana retailer operating within the town.
Seconded, Mr. Weeks.
Adoption of the statute will provide the town the ability to impose a 3% local sales tax on marijuana products sold by marijuana retailers.
Any questions or concerns? Mr. Zucco.
My only question is, can we do that legally? Is that legal for us to do that?
Yeah. It's actually the max taxes as well. We want to get our best bang for our buck if it actually happens. Yes, it is.
The question was, is that the maximum amount? And the answer is yes. Any other questions or comments? We're going to have it, tax it, right? Okay. All those in favor of Article 28 signify by saying aye. Aye. All those opposed, nay. The ayes have it. Article 28 is adopted. Oh, it is by two-thirds.
Two-thirds vote. Yep.
No.
It doesn't say it.
Next one is.
The ayes have it. Article 28 is adopted. Article 29, Mr. Weeks.
I move the town vote to amend the Town of Hanson Land Use Regulations zoning bylaw, Section 7, subsection L, personal wireless service facilities by inserting at the end of subsection 3 the following. Notwithstanding the above, cell towers shall be placed on any municipal property in any zone. The site location will have to be approved by two-thirds vote at town meeting. Installation of a cell tower on municipal land shall comply within the remaining requirements of Section 7L.
Do we have a second? Seconded. Mr. Weeks.
This motion has additional language not printed in the town meeting warrant. This allows the town to place a cell tower on municipal property regardless of which zoning district the property is located. The town must meet all other regulations.
This also has to be adopted by a two-thirds vote. Mr. Armstrong.
Yes, through you to Mr. Weeks. What if this is actually put on an existing structure? It's not considered a tower. How does that affect the bylaw? For example, if somebody wanted to put it on the water tower, you don't have the same fall issues on an existing structure, because I work in the city. We do it all the time in buildings, and we don't have the same issues that we have as a tower.
Yeah,
Mr. Weeks.
I think that question would best be answered by maybe the town administrator. You'd want to answer that?
The town council. You're getting busy.
I'm getting a workout. So essentially, the reason why cell towers are treated different, even though they aren't considered a building, is there's a whole bylaw, a whole section of the zoning bylaw which governs the approval process for cell towers. And part of the reason for that is it had certain federal protections.
Oh, I understand that. My question is specifically regarding the attachment to existing structures. It's not considered a tower, because I know when I work in the city, they don't consider it a tower. You don't have the fall zone requirements. You don't have a lot of other issues like that. And we're always talking about a tower. And the water tower is the most perfect example in this town, where you have a structure, they put a ring on 4 cell towers, yet the same bylaws, as they are written in our existing bylaws, require you to have a fall zone if they're on existing structures. In most cities and towns that actually have existing structures that put cell appurtenances on the existing structures, they're exempt from that part. This change doesn't reflect that, is what I'm getting at.
That makes sense.
One moment. Did you have a response? Or-
No,
I think Mr. Armstrong.
There's no fall provision in this particular section, no.
All right. Mr. Vest, could you come to the microphone, please?
It gets serious if I pull the microphone out. All right, so this is a question of zoning. It's not a question of whether the antennas can go on top of the water tower or what have you. It's purely a question of zoning. And I'd like everybody to understand what this zoning can and may possibly do in the future. First of all, I'd like to, through you, Mr. Moderator, I'd like to poll the audience and see how many folks would like a 200-foot cell tower next to their property.
I don't think we'll have any polls. Please make a statement.
I can't do that. Okay, all right, then very good. Let's move forward. Let's move forward. So my question was, are we allowing a commercial use in a residential zone? And the answer that I came up with is yes. We're allowing spot zoning. So I want to just describe some email correspondence that went between myself and town council and our town administrator. So I had asked them if indeed this is a use that certainly supersedes our existing zoning bylaw, and I think that's the main train of thought that we have to have here. Are we superseding our existing zoning bylaw? And the question is yes. So I said, I appreciate your question, but I do not believe that this zoning bylaw quoted in your email addresses my concern. They were not able to answer the question definitively of whether or not this supersedes current zoning bylaw. So my reasons are just as simple as this amendment, and I'd like to present this amendment right now. My amendment reads as following: under no circumstances shall this bylaw change allow a commercial enterprise in a residential zone Going to read that again. Under no circumstances shall this bylaw change allow a commercial enterprise in a residential zone, and I'm going to present that amendment to the town clerk right now, if Mr. Moderator allows.
Please.
Thank you.
Mr. Weeks, do you have a response?
No, I just think that, as a planning board, we were presented with the opportunity to try to help out the town in some way to create better cell service. And I think this is a great mechanism to kind of overlay some of the zoning prohibitions that we kind of have already. So I think that this is a good opportunity where we have to say to ourselves, when you're driving through the center of town, do you want cell phone service? And I think that this is going to be one step to do that. But again, there's no... we don't have any skin in the game in this. We're just trying to solve a problem that the town has been faced with for a while now.
Mr. Moderator, do I still have the floor?
I could give it back to you.
Thank you very much, sir. Thank you, Mr. Moderator. Okay, so my reasons are just as simple as the amendment that I've just presented. Above, current zoning bylaw protects our citizens from any commercial enterprise from being permitted in a residential zone. Any change that changes that cannot be allowed, and the reason it cannot be allowed is because this proposed bylaw change cannot supersede existing zoning bylaw with or without town meeting approval. This article would allow a form of spot zoning to occur, and for those of you who are not familiar with spot zoning, that is making an allowance to town zoning bylaw for a specific use. And obviously, we're talking about a cell phone here. That is a commercial enterprise, and it indeed does not belong in a residential zone. And the reason for my wanting to poll town meeting body to see who wants a 200-foot cell tower in their backyard is just because of this reason. Right now, we're protected by zoning bylaw. And as I said earlier, we could not allow that zoning bylaw to be superseded by anything under any circumstance. Spot zoning is wrong. Our citizens must have current zoning bylaw held intact to ensure our quality of life, the valuation of our properties, and the aesthetics of our neighborhoods. So I then asked town council to offer me verbiage as to how he felt that we were not superseding the zoning bylaw. And indeed, he was unable to do so. The reply, the reply was applications for personal wireless service facilities will only be considered in the commercial industrial zoning district. Oh, that's a good answer. Everybody agree? That's a good answer. We're protected. And then we come up with, notwithstanding the above, cell towers may be placed on any municipal property in any zone. Those statements are more contradictory than I could possibly describe at this microphone here tonight. So the answer was applications will only be considered in the commercial industrial zoning district, as they should. However, notwithstanding the above, cell towers may be placed in any municipal property in any zone. What this article does, Article 29 here tonight, is it supersedes our zoning bylaw. We have zoning bylaws in place to protect each and every one of our homes, each of our properties, and indeed to preserve, as I stated earlier, the aesthetics, property values, the valuation of our neighborhoods. I don't think anybody here, particularly unless they've got a lot of land, wants a cell tower adjacent to their residential property. So I would ask you tonight to allow this amendment to pass, because that's where we are right now. I presented an amendment, and the amendment basically states that under no circumstances shall this bylaw change allow a commercial enterprise in a residential zone. It's that simple.
Mr. Vest, as a point of information for my edification,
Please.
Your proposed language would go at the end of what is proposed in the warrant.
Actually, this is the amendment prior to the article, and I'm amending the article right now, sir, for this amendment to be included in what's to be discussed during the actual article itself.
No, that's what I'm saying. Article
Yes.
29 proposes adding to the end of subsection 3 language that begins notwithstanding the above. Do you propose that your language come at the end of that
No,
language?
my language comes before because I want the amendment to be included in Article 29. And I believe I can do that. I believe that is correct for town meeting law, and I would certainly not accept any challenge otherwise.
So what you're saying is you want your language to substitute for the language that's proposed by Article 29?
I want my language to be included.
Okay, so it would now read, under no circumstances shall this bylaw change allow a commercial enterprise in a residential zone, notwithstanding the above, cell towers shall be placed on any municipal property in any zone.
That is correct.
Okay.
And then, after the amendment is either accepted or not accepted, I recommend we move on to the article, and I'd like to discuss that at that time.
I'm sure. Yes. I've been informed by town council to just point out that any placement of any tower would require a 2/3 vote of the town meeting before it could take effect. That this is baked into the new bylaw. Anything new, Mr. Weeks?
I was just going to say, I think it's important, speaking to the amendment in particular, if you take out commercial enterprises, you're strictly limiting the amount of cell phone coverage that we could possibly have, and I think that's what the town kind of needs. I would just reiterate, to your point, that it is a 2/3 vote. So the idea is that no one does have to follow the regular zoning bylaws, all the regulations, the butters have to be notified and all that. They have to go through that process, but then it also has to go to town meeting, which means it has to go through the Board of Selectmen, go to before the townspeople, and any site that gets presented has to have a 2/3 vote. So there are plenty of checks and balances, and just because we're zoning it, it just gives us flexibility and options. Doesn't mean that's going to go everywhere. So we want to give that.
It's going to require a 2/3 vote tonight and then 2/3 in the future. Pardon me? After the amendment. Mr. Zucco, are you speaking to the amendment?
Yes, I am. Very quickly, John Zucco, 101 Glenwood Place. A cell phone tower, basically, we're at the point where it's a public utility. I live on Glenwood Place. It's a residential area. You go a third of the way down the street and you have giant electrical National Grid stuff going right across the street. So what is the difference between that going across my street or having an electrical tower, a cell phone tower in the same area?
Any other questions or comments?
Address that?
No.
I'd like to take a vote on your amendment so we can move this along. All those in favor of the amendment...
Mr. Moderator, point of procedure. Would not the amendment have to be in the form of motion, and has that motion been seconded?
You are correct, Mr. Clemens. I do believe Mr. Vest made a formal motion. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you. There's a second. All those in favor of Mr. Vest's amendment to Article 29's language signify by saying aye. Aye. All those opposed, nay. Nay. The nays have it. The amendment is defeated. We can move on to a general discussion of Article 29 if there's anything new to add.
Just public service corporations, which are the electric company, the gas company, the for-profit businesses that actually serve our towns, are covered under special regulations that allow them to work on municipal property on a regular basis. We do it all the time. I mean, I used to work for NSTAR, now Eversource. We used to do run-through power lines all the time. Technology the laws have not kept up with technology, and they're considered wireless service, no longer public service corporations. So they're always struggling to try to figure out how to work out to make it work. But everyone in this room probably has a cell phone, and we work with them all the time at home, but they don't have the liberties of working like a public service corporation. That's why towns have to put together bylaws like this to make it happen. And it's because the laws have not kept up with the way the utilities are getting it now. And so I commend the board for putting this together, but we need to treat them like a public service corporation so they can do their business, so that we can get service. And I just wanted to point that out. There's a very big difference between a utility company and a telephone company. The telephone company has privileges because they have the poles and the wires, but they run them on town property all the time. This is the different part, because our laws have not kept up with technology. Thank you.
Now, remembering we've all heard what you said before, Mr. Vest.
I'll try something different. It was said that we need to have cell service in the town of Hanson. I would hope that each and every person here tonight, town meeting member here tonight, is aware that we have a site that is in the woods in conservation. I believe it's conservation land, Phil, by the school, middle school? No. Is it town land? Just town land. Okay, so we do have a site that we're looking at that places the cell tower in a perfect spot. It's going to give the service that everybody so deserves, wants, and deserved. But I really think we have to revisit the idea of specifically changing a zoning bylaw for a very specific use. That's not right. It's just not the way it should be done. I would urge you to vote down Article 29 if you're concerned at all about any other commercial use on or near residential town-owned land. We shouldn't change the zoning for one use. It's not the right way of doing things. And I really hope you understand Article 29 will circumvent that. This will give us possibly a commercial entity in a residential zone. Thank you.
Yes, ma'am.
Joan Frazzetti from Elm Street in Hanson. My only question is that there was supposed to be a fall zone connected to this too, and there isn't. There was supposed to be a 200-foot fall zone so that if anything happened to the tower, it wouldn't affect any people or surrounding it.
Mr. Weeks can address that, I believe.
It is?
It's the next article.
Next article, yeah. It is calculated within the height requirements.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions or comments? Article 29, as printed in the warrant, requires a 2/3 vote. All those in favor of Article 29 signify by saying aye. Aye. All those opposed, nay. No. Article 29 has been approved by 2/3 vote. Article 30. Mr. Weeks.
I move the town vote to amend the Town of Hanson Land Use Regulations zoning bylaw, Section 7, subsection L, personal wireless service facilities by deleting subsection 6D, the words 150 feet, and inserting in its place the words 200 feet.
Seconded. Mr. Weeks.
To increase the maximum height requirements for cell towers to increase their effectiveness.
Any questions or comments on this? Mr. Armstrong.
Mr. Weeks, similar to the question I asked in the last article, except when it's attached to an existing structure?
Yeah, I think that the town council would be better served to answer that question.
And I believe she has.
Yeah. But this is specifically about fall zones. That's what I'm getting at. If they're attached to existing structures, they typically don't have a fall zone. In most cities I've worked in doing these, they've never had a fall zone on existing structures.
Sorry. This particular amendment just raises the height limitation. It's not addressing your fall zone.
Okay. Thank you.
Any other questions or comments? Seeing none, all those in favor of Article 30 signify by saying aye. Aye. All those opposed, nay. The ayes have it. Article 30 required a 2/3 vote. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. All those opposed, nay. Article 30 is adopted by a 2/3 vote. Article 31, Mr. Weeks.
All right, last one. I move the town vote the codification, reorganization, and indexing of the table of contents of the Town of Hanson Land Use Regulations, a copy of which is on file with the town clerk's office.
Seconded. Mr. Weeks.
Housekeeping article to revise the table of contents to reflect zoning bylaw changes that were made in May of 2017.
Any questions or comments on Article 31? Seeing none, all those in favor of Article 31 signify by saying aye. Oh, and it requires a 2/3 vote. Thank you. Thank you very much. All those in favor of Article 31 signify by saying aye. Aye. All those opposed, nay. The ayes have it by a 2/3 margin. Article 32, Mr. McGann.
I move the town vote to authorize the Board of Selectmen on its behalf to petition the General Court to repeal Chapter 214 of the Acts of 1986 and submit for passage of a new special law substantially as provided below. The legislature may make clerical or editorial changes in form only to the bill unless the Board of Selectmen approves amendments to the bill before enactment of the legislature. The Board of Selectmen is hereby authorized to approve amendments that shall be within the scope of the general public objectives of this petition as printed in the warrant.
Seconded. Mr. McGann.
This article seeks to better define the circumstances under which an elected official can be recalled. Interpretation of whether one or more of these conditions are met will be rendered by town council. Since the original act was created by the Massachusetts Legislature through a selectman's petition authorized by a town meeting. The same is required to effectuate any change.
And we have an amendment that you're proposing, Mr. McGann?
There are two amendments. If you'll notice on page, on the first page, there's a notice of intent to recall. Within the first sentence, currently in the warrant, it says at least 170 days. This is to be removed and replaced with the following: within a reasonable time determined by the town clerk. The second amendment is under section C, recall petitions. Second paragraph, end of the first sentence. In the current warrant, it reads, on the date of the next town election, and it is to be replaced with the following: within a reasonable time, but no earlier than 45 days from the town clerk's certification of the petition. These particular...
And Mr. McGann, it should be noted that since these are friendly amendments from the author of the article, they do not require a vote. So we'll just consider the article as amended. Mr. McGann.
What we tried to do is we tried to use some of the elements of the existing bylaw for recall. And what we tried to do was also put in, more importantly, reasons for a recall. There are 7 listed reasons as printed in the warrant. In addition to that, there's also a notice of intent to recall. There's requirements that must go forward and be certified by town clerk and, of course, by town council. This change proposed is to make this bylaw more fair, responsible, and reasonable. Putting in, we heard about checks and balances and the balance of power between both the people and the elected officials. It protects the elected officials from being able to convey and express their opinions without reason to feel that they're going to get recalled, quite frankly. In addition to this, I feel that the current bylaw is flawed, where an elected official, it's been known, could get recalled on any statement. If they choose to wear blue shirts, you could recall them. If you don't like the color of their tie or whatever it is that they do, you can recall them. Again, what we're doing here is we're trying to be responsible, reasonable, and define the recall for the reasons for it, as well as being fair.
Any questions or concerns? Mr. Young.
Thank you, sir.
And before we begin the debate, at this late hour, I'd really like to not relitigate the recall of a few years ago.
I totally agree.
But stay on the merits of this proposal. Mr. Young, you have the floor.
Yes. First of all, I'd like to say that the current recall law has been in effect since 1986. Okay? It hasn't been abused. It's only...
Please order, Mr. Young.
Abuse is in the eye of the beholder. Those who believe that a recall law is being retaliated as a retaliation measure are usually the people being recalled. Well, the majority of people who vote for the recall, it's called holding the people accountable for their actions. Okay? So that's not a laughing matter in any stretch of the imagination. But I'd just like to say it's only been used 3 times since 1986. Okay? Each time it's been used, the person has been recalled by an overwhelming margin. I'd also like to state that the big difference between the current recall law and the recall being proposed is very simple. In the current recall law, which incidentally contains language that the vast majority of towns in the Commonwealth have, the grounds for recall are decided by the people who are soliciting the recall. And then it's up to the voters, it's up to the people signing the recall and the voters of Hanson to decide whether the grounds for recall rise to the seriousness to remove that person from office before the end of their term. In the current recall that's being proposed, the selectmen are basically proposing that we put restrictions on the reasons why elected officials can be recalled. The one that comes to mind the most is you have to basically be committed of a felony or convicted of a felony or certain serious misdemeanors, or admit to them in a court of law while you are serving in order to be recalled. And I'll just give an extreme example why this is pretty crazy. You could conceivably have someone who has been elected to serve on the school committee, okay, who had been convicted of abusing a child in the state of Connecticut. The person serves about 6 months into their term before someone realizes that this guy was a former convicted felon, convicted of child abuse. You could not remove that person from office under the way that this bylaw, this law is written, because that person wasn't convicted of that crime while he was serving as a member of the school committee. I mean, I could go on and give you examples a mile long, but that is the basic, one of the real basic flaws with this new law. And no one sitting up at that table can tell me that I'm wrong. That is a basic, horrible flaw with this law that's being proposed. You could have a town official at the town hall who's an elected official who could basically be harassing women employees up there. He could not be removed. He could not be. He could not be removed from office until he is arrested, tried, and convicted, or admit to that. That could take 2 or 3 years under our justice system here in Massachusetts. I mean, I could give you example after example why this.
I think you've covered.
This is totally flawed. All right, but I would just make the last statement and say, I was elected as a town official in this town 6 times to office. I relied on the fair-minded people to pass judgment on me before I sat in a seat as a member of the Board of Selectmen and the Board of Water Commissioners. I also think it's the right of the town of Hanson, the voters of the town of Hanson, and the fair-minded voters of Hanson, to pass judgment on me on whether the grounds for recall on myself rise to the seriousness on whether I should be removed from office. So I put my hands in the trust of the fair-minded voters of Hanson, okay, to do that. And that's the main thrust of why this article should be defeated. And that's all I have to say.
Mr. O'Sullivan.
Joe O'Sullivan, 625 West Washington Street in Hanson. I'm a fair-minded voter. I stand in support of this. In most towns and communities, people are removed from office by recall for malfeasance, misfeasance, or nonfeasance. The toxic political environment in this community causes good people not to run for those seats up there. I stand by this right now. I would encourage you to vote for this. It eliminates exactly what Mr. McCann said, being recalled because somebody disagrees with the position you took as part of your job that you were elected to do, and we've seen that happen. I encourage you to vote this.
Mr. Vess.
Thank you very much, Mr. Marta, through you. Over 2,000 people signed an affidavit stating that they had valid reasons for the last 2 recalls, both of them successful.
Once again, sir, I don't want to
No, do not restrict my speech. Hold it right here. I have the microphone. I am describing.
I have a microphone too, sir.
The exact reason
I specifically
why
said
this
I did not.
go through.
Please, sir. I said
you
did
cannot
not
dictate, Mr. Moderator. You cannot dictate
I can
what
decide.
I'm going to present this meeting.
I know you've got the enterprise on speed dial, but I can decide what's within the scope of this argument.
You can get that gentleman to walk out of here and take me out. All right?
I prefer,
I have a right
Mr.
to my
Vess,
presentation.
Mr. Vess, I prefer not to do that. I can, but I prefer not to.
Then let me go ahead.
I would like this.
Then let me go ahead.
I would like this not to be a relitigation of the last recall.
My apologies to the town meeting body. And Helen, please sit down right now. My apologies to the town meeting body. But but I certainly do have something to say here tonight. And what I have to say describes why we should not... Order. You need to have some respect, sir. And Mr. Moderator, you need to control your town meeting. You have a speaker with the microphone with valid information.
And I just called order so you could make your speech. Please do so.
Thank you very much. Thank you. 2,000 people signed this affidavit because they felt that the two selectmen were indeed operating in a fashion that should not... Wait a minute, Mr. Moderator, will you please control your meeting?
Sir,
all right.
I have been controlling this meeting since 7:30. Please.
Okay, here goes.
And I just had a point of order, which is a privileged motion. Ms. Fitzgerald Kemet.
Yes, I thought that you said that we weren't going to be talking about the past recalls in detail.
Actually, the past recall is the reason why we need to go forward.
I think, sir, that you can address this article, whether you agree with it or not, without bringing up the last bit of business where a recall was used.
All right, I'll try it this way.
I mean, I have an absolute right...
I'll change my tack.
Sir, I have an absolute right to prevent ad hominem attacks in this meeting, and I will do so.
There are no names mentioned in what I have to present here tonight.
It's a small town. Please, continue your speech.
All right, very good, thank you. So the reasons presented for this, for the recall of these two selectmen, are as follows, and these reasons are what absolutely needs to be heard here tonight. That he has, by complicity and with the use of town council and town taxpayer funds...
Point of order.
Am I okay?
No.
Am I okay?
Please continue.
Thank you very much. That he has, by complicity and with the use of town council and town taxpayer funds, attempted to invalidate the outcome of two of the most important, well-attended town meetings in Hanson history of approximately 600 and 1,200 voters. This reason will no longer be allowed to you, the taxpayers and the voters of Hanson. That he has continuously disseminated misinformation and political talking points in order to promote and market to the voters of Hanson a project that would result in the largest tax increase in Hanson history. That goes away.
Mr. Moderator.
Again, Ms. Fitzgerald Kemet.
At the risk of being redundant, I thought that we agreed that we weren't going to include bodies here.
I didn't agree to anything, ma'am.
I'm talking to the moderator.
Yes, and Ms. Fitzgerald Kemet's point is well taken. There's no need to reread what was put forward as the recall several years ago. Is this a wise change to the bylaws or not?
This is not a wise change to the bylaws because it removes protections that you currently have to remove a public official that you don't feel is doing their job. That is the idea of a recall. These are the reasons why 2,000 plus people signed that affidavit that resulted in a 2-to-1 victory for the two recalls. This is not light stuff here, folks. We voted overwhelmingly to recall these two selectmen, and we did it for valid reasons. And I'm prepared to carry further. Mr. Moderator, thank you.
I think your point is made, Mr. Vest. Sir.
Adam Valkovic, 372 Holmes Street. To bring fact into relevancy here, so everybody knows, only half of the towns in Massachusetts alone have recall bylaws. So the fact that we have one is actually somewhat amazing. If we're going to have a bylaw, let's have it as transparent as possible. That's all I would say. I would definitely vote for this.
Mr. O'Sullivan.
I move the vote. I have a second at this moment.
One moment, please. I'd like to have, I don't believe I've called on you at all tonight. Ma'am.
Hi, Arlene Verity, 502 Indian Head Street. At first glance, this article does appear to be a little self-policing, with all due respect, and it insulates the elected officials a bit from the voting body of this town. And it does seem, if you can elect an official and you have a due reason to remove them from office, why in fact did you have to have a waiting period to do that? And also for the under section 2A, as Mr.
Young.
couldn't think of his name, I'm nervous,
Don't be.
spoke before. It is a little bit flawed with that while presently in office comment in there, because you could get in trouble with somebody that has actually committed a crime being in office for some period of time. And the other thing, through you, Mr. Moderator, I'd like to ask Mr. McGann, what prompted the Board of Selectmen to draft this article? I don't quite understand if we have been functioning for years without any problems and solved some crimes of officials with the recall as it was written. I don't understand this complicated self-policing amendment here. Thank you.
Thank you. And I think with Mr. McGann's response, we can bring the debate to a conclusion.
I've held a number of Board of Selectmen meetings where we've talked about why this has been drawn up, okay? I've done talk show hosts with Kevin Tachi. It's been all over the news, WATD. So anytime you use or misuse a bylaw like this to control, or a small person or population to control another selectman in any way, shape, or form is wrong, okay? So that was the primary reason as to why this is being brought up. Secondly, it was important to note that we tried to make sure that if a person isn't doing their job on the Board of Selectmen, okay, that point alone would be covered under item 7 on this bylaw for reasons of recall. All right, I had town council check that 5 or 6 times to make sure. We gave different reasons why. Okay, so it can be done if the person isn't doing their job. We are being self-policing, to your point. I feel more that we're being responsible to it, okay? So that nobody can take this and misuse it to try to get their way.
Mr. Young, last point.
Before I make the last point, one of the first points were made that people who wear spotted ties or high-button shoes or part their hair down the middle could be recalled. Sure they could, but go ahead and find 1,000 voters nuts enough to sign that recall petition, and I'm going to move out of Hanson, I assure you.
All righty, and I think we can move the question at this point.
The question I ask is, where in this recall petition is that language that Mr. McGann speaks about, that the last three recalls elections that we held that removed individuals would allow you to do that? I mean, he just made the statement that you could recall people who aren't doing their jobs. I'm asking town council, where is that in the language for this recall, this new recall that permits that?
Mr. Young,
Mr. McGann.
I just told you item 7 under the reasons for recall.
Well, which reason?
Violation of law, regulation, bylaw, or other abdication of the applicable requirements for the elected position.
Is that applicable? What is that?
Town council indicates yes, it was. It would.
Will town council please answer my question?
Mr. Young, I think we've had.
It's not in there.
And secondly,
and I think there's enough information before the meeting to take a vote on this.
I'm just telling you that's not in there. That last.
If that's your assertion, then
no, that's a fact. It's not in here.
Okay. Very good. All those in favor of Article 32 signify by saying aye. Aye. All those opposed signify by saying nay. Nay. The ayes have it. Very well. You don't have to get angry. If I could please have everyone who is in favor of Article 32 signify by holding up your blue card at this time, and the tellers will take the vote. God.
Well, I guess we're going to do they know.
Could be off on that, but I don't think I am.
And I've just confirmed that this is by a majority vote.
Twenty-one.
21.
34.
34.
25.
25. All those opposed to Article 32 signify by holding up your blue card now. Two. Mr. Campbell? 6. Mr. Norton?
42.
42. And by a vote of 80 to 50, Article 32 is adopted.
Thank you.
Pardon me? Oh, as amended.
And I thank you, ladies and gentlemen, very much.
Article 33, I make a motion to hold an election on May 19th. Please note, it will be at the middle school, not at McQuon. Come here, not there. May 19th, the polls open at what time, Madam Clerk? 10 o'clock. And that motion is seconded. All those in favor of Article 33 signify by saying aye. Aye. All those opposed, nay. The ayes have it. This town meeting is adjourned until May 19th for the purposes of holding an election.